Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 885 of the news. And today we have very, very big news that Israel looks like they might be going to war with Iranian proxies in the next 24 hours after an attack by Hezbollah forces on their country. Very big news to cover, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the breaking news of tonight's stream, as war does appear to be imminent, most likely within the next 24 hours within the area of Israel and Lebanon, as we have seen that a unsolicited attack by a Hezbollah rocket today landed within an area of a border town, killing a large amount of children and parents that were attending a youth football game within the area. We are now seeing that the Israelis are currently conducting a bombing campaign of Lebanon at this moment, spanning the entire area south of the Litani River within the nation, and it does appear, according to our information, that even larger offensive and ground actions may be coming within the next 24 hours alone, according to current information. Not only that, we've been able to get breaking news that within the Conoco oil fields, U.S. forces are once again under attack for the third day in a row, and it does appear that Iranian-backed proxy groups are not only attacking Israel in large form in the area of northern Israel, but they are also attempting to target and try and inflict casualties upon U.S. forces and garrisons within the area of Eastern Syria and also within the area of western and southern Iraq. Simultaneously, we were able to get the breaking news that a Ukrainian drone attack near to a Ryazan airfield was able to strike several Tu-22 M3 bombers, leading to damage on at least one of them, according to prior information. We were also able to see that Russian military aviation also suffered another severe catastrophe today, as an Su-34 near to the area of Volgograd went into a flat spin, from what we understand, and immediately collided with the ground. Both pilots, from what we understand, were able to eject and did survive, but that information is still a little bit iffy at best, as we have no official sources or video or picture evidence to confirm that. It just appears to be rumors and speculation online about the fate of those pilots. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are also conducting a large drone campaign once again on the city of Kursk on the border region of the Russian Federation, appearing to once again target and attempt to destroy military installations and targets within this key city. Not only that, Ukrainian forces are continuing to consolidate in the areas of Avdiivka and Bakhmut, once again trying to hold their lines against the Russian bulwarks, which are attempting to advance in these areas. And we can also see that the Ukrainian forces are still continuing to put heavy pressure onto the Russian garrisons in the northern region of Vovchansk, as they still try to push them out of the country and be able to move their forces further south and rejoin the main efforts near Bakhmut and Avdiivka. We have an incredibly large amount of news today. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, a small earthquake was also registered at a nuclear test site in North Korea today, and there has been wild speculation about what that could have been. We will be getting into that in a little bit. That one's more of a smaller side shoot bit of news, but nevertheless, it is still something interesting that happened today that is worth speaking about. And of course, we have a wildly high amount of news to cover tonight. And we're going to actually not be covering the Ukraine war first. We're actually going to be moving on down into the Middle East, as we have seen probably some of the largest and quickest developments in between Hezbollah and Israel that has been seen so far since the 6th of October of 2023, almost a year ago at this point. Well, actually it's around 8 or 9 months ago, where Hamas breached the border around the Gaza Strip and ended up massacring around 1,500 to 2,000 Israeli citizens within 24 hours and took hundreds more hostage. We have seen that Hezbollah has been involved in offensive efforts against Israel since that point, but never in incredibly large form. And the Israeli Air Force has usually been making piecemeal work of taking out the Hezbollah commanders within the area of Southern Lebanon, and also trying to once again curb their hostile actions as best as they possibly can. We have seen that in the meantime, a Israeli security force, we do not know the exact size, had been moved into the area to fortify the border region and to most likely act as a screening or security force for the northern border region. That situation remained unchanged, and Hezbollah continued to fire off unguided rockets and mortars into the area of northern Israel, with Israel using Iron Domes, Patriots, and many other kinds of air defense systems like David Sling to be able to intercept and destroy most of these incoming rockets and mortar rounds. Most of these have been intercepted successfully, and the damage to the Israeli citizenry has been marginal at best within this area. However, today was a very different story. I can only show y'all one video clip of what happened. If we were to show y'all anything more than this, we would probably get age restricted on YouTube. The videos that came out today of this attack was incredibly graphic and very disturbing to watch for many. And we would have to say that while we are going to have to pull a trust me bro here and tell y'all that this was an incredibly bad attack by video and picture evidence, I also would highly suggest that maybe y'all do not watch those videos. They are incredibly gory. They are very graphic. It shows people who have been dismembered by the explosion, but I will give you all the context of what happened around this explosion and why so many ended up dying in the explosion. This is a Hezbollah rocket, very similar to a Qassam that would be used by Hamas and fired out of the Gaza Strip towards a town like Ashkelon. From what we understand, this was fired by Hezbollah, and for some reason, a Iron Dome was not able to intercept this rocket as it was making its way into the area. We were assuming that it was not able to hit this rocket because there may have not been an Iron Dome in close enough range, and also the place of impact of this rocket was a town called Majd al-Shams, which you can actually see right here, and we can actually see the little football field area right here. They'll become very important later. We can also see the larger sized one right over here. This is actually where the attack occurred today. It was right in this specific area. But nevertheless, this rocket did not travel that far into Israel, and not only that, it is in one of its farthest northern fringes. And we have seen that while Israeli defense forces along the border in this area have been attacked by Hezbollah forces within southern Lebanon, we have never actually seen a large amount of rockets being fired into the area around Majd al-Shams. Usually, a larger amount of rockets are being fired into the area around Acre, or the larger city of Haifa. So it seems as though most air defense may have been focalized within that area and not focalized into the border region near Majd al-Shams, which may be a plausible explanation for why this rocket ended up hitting the town. There is also a plausible explanation that it was just one of the lucky rockets that made it through. There could have been an Iron Dome in this area that was attempting to intercept the rocket, and while the Iron Dome has an incredibly high efficiency and shoot down rate, nearly of 99%, there is a small chance that a rocket would be able to evade the Iron Dome system and make its way to its target inside of Israel, and it appears that that's what happened today. This video was filmed from the northern area of Majd al-Shams that we're about to be watching right here from the hills, looking southwards towards the football field. I once again want to keep in mind here that the person is filming close to this this church or religious building right here that is marked on the map, and they are looking directly south towards the football field that is right here. The explosion in this video originated directly dead center of the football field, and I will now show you all this clip. This is the only one that we can show. We cannot show any aftermath footage because all of the aftermath footage was incredibly gruesome and very disturbing, and YouTube would not allow that to be shown on air. Although, I would say that while it is very gruesome, if we had the option of showing that to y'all, we most likely would have shown this to y'all this one time to try and get across the severity of the situation. It was an incredibly brutal attack, and even I, who have seen a lot of war footage in Ukraine and have seen a large amount of people get killed in very gruesome ways, this was on up there. This was actually very rough to look at earlier on in the day when we were compiling this news. But nevertheless, here's the clip. And that rocket right there was the one that impacted dead center of the football field, and the carnage then quickly ensued right after that explosion occurred.
Also, one thing I want to note as well is we heard a lot of people saying earlier today, and it was propaganda coming from the Hezbollah terrorists. They were trying to say that that was a missile fragment or some type of air defense fragment that landed on the civilians. Very clearly, even from this view right here, you can see that that was clearly a missile, a rocket from Hezbollah that came down on the civilians. So that was not a fragment, and it was not any debris from any Israeli weapon. Not at all. We can see that right here.
Yes, and also to debunk that, one thing that's very important to remember about unguided rockets, and someone said, well, these are unguided, right? Steve actually asked that. Yes, these are unguided rockets, meaning that they have absolutely no guidance systems in them. They are fired into a general area. They were fired directly at this village because while they are not pinpoint accurate, you can fire them and you will have a really good idea of where they will land. These rockets were targeted at this city inside of northern Israel. what we can tell by this explosion right there is that that is a high explosive that just detonated. If it was a fragment, it would have landed and there would have been some smoke, maybe some dirt kicked up, but it wouldn't have been a significant explosion that looks like it has some sort of explosive filler inside of it. So this is not a missile fragment. This is the high explosive warhead of an unguided rocket that just slammed into the middle of that football field and exploded. Just to show you all that again. That is clearly a rocket that is impacted directly inside of the center of the city. I'm now going to move us back to the Google Maps here at the picture of this football field to explain a little bit more of what happened afterwards, which we, once again, I have to say many times, cannot show. There is a large amount of video pictures and evidence out on Twitter currently of the carnage that ensued from this explosion, but we are not going to be showing that here on this channel, and we're not going to be showing it also because YouTube does not allow it, although it's very important for people to understand the kind of severity that has happened with this attack. I'll try and explain it the best I can. The explosion hit, from what we understand, literally dead center of this field, and we believe that this is the one that was hit, not the larger one up here. We actually believe it was the smaller one down here because it was a youth game that was being conducted by local schools. Parents were in attendance watching their children play the football game, or the football match, when the rocket exploded dead center of the field. The shrapnel immediately dismembered a large amount of the children that were on the field playing, and also ended up killing several of the parents that were watching as well. Chaos immediately descended upon the entirety of Machdal Shams as multiple parents started to rush the field trying to check on their children and make sure that they were not one of the killed or one of the severely wounded. From what we understand, many other of the children and parents that are currently, were there during the attack, are in very critical condition and are clinging on for life. Some of them will most likely not survive into the next day because of the severity of their injuries. The attack has been a pure act of evil and is once again showing the kind of attempts that Hezbollah has been making so far and has been failing at succeeding, but nevertheless succeeded with one rocket today. Really, for Hezbollah, this is their one lucky rocket. For the Hezbollah of the future, this will probably be their one unlucky rocket because of the consequences of what happened. Hezbollah is firing, much like Hamas, these rockets into the interior of Israel, or areas that are currently controlled by Israel, like Machdal Shams, which is actually within the Golan Heights, which is unofficially a part of Israel, but technically is actually a part of Syria. But Israel has controlled the Golan Heights since about the 1970s, meaning that this town has been within the area of Israel since the 70s. However, Hezbollah is firing off unguided rockets at every single populated area they can. And a lot of people are always amiss to this fact that if it was not for the Iron Dome anti-air defense system and also the Patriots and David slings that the Israelis have access to, all of these Hezbollah rockets that are being fired that we get to watch shot down like a fireworks show over Israel every single night would be hitting within cities like Machdal Shams. They would be hitting within cities like Haifa on the coast, or Acre just further north towards the Lebanese border, and inflicting a massive amount of deaths and casualties upon the Israeli citizenry, and pretty much conducting a war of terror against the people of Israel itself. It is something that a lot of people forget about, because usually none of these Hamas and Hezbollah rocket attacks ever succeed. They get shot down almost 100% of the time, and no damage is ever really felt or seen by the Israeli public or really by the world at large. And it leads many people to have a sense of complacency that it's not actually Hezbollah and Hamas that are incredibly dangerous and hell-bent on some form of genocide against not only the Jewish people living in Israel, but really anyone living within an area controlled by Israel, and we'll get back to that caveat in a minute. They are planning on trying to kill everyone within Israel. If they had the means to do so, they would. Israel, on the other hand, usually is painted as the bad guy by some because they have the ability to defend themselves, and so most of the time, most of these rockets don't end up creating a disaster or a tragedy like we saw today, and then Israel has the means to go into a place like Gaza and level entire city blocks where they believe that Hamas may be staging and basing their operations from, which does produce civilian casualties, but nevertheless is an unfortunate necessity given the conditions of the Gaza Strip and also how Hamas operates, which is a very in-depth thing to get into, but we might get into that a little bit later on in the night. But getting back to the caveat where Hezbollah is not only targeting the Jewish people of Israel, but they're also targeting the people of Israel in general who live within the area, the people of Majd al-Shams are actually not Jewish, and they're not Israelis by most people's idea or stereotype of an Israeli. The city of Majd al-Shams is pretty much entirely inhabited by a group of people called the Druze. The Druze are a local people. They're actually Arabic by ethnicity that live within this area of Israel controlled in the Golan Heights. These people were attacked today and targeted by Hezbollah, these unguided rockets being aimed at Majd al-Shams, and they're not even Jewish, and they're kind of, well, really by all ethnic standards, they're not even really Israeli. They're more so Syrian Arabic. And nevertheless, they still came under the gun of a Hezbollah attack, not because Hezbollah actually cares about their religious ideology or their religious claim to the region. They just care that the region is not theirs and isn't under the rule of their iron fist, which goes all the way back to Tehran inside of Iran. That is the major concern that they have, and so it doesn't matter whether it is the technical, by most people's definition, the Jewish Israelis, or just Israelis living within Israel in general. Every single one of them is a target to Hezbollah and Hamas, and they seek to destroy and kill as many people as they can, much like we saw with this unfortunate massacre that occurred at the Majd al-Shams football field today. And a lot of people have been seeing that outrage has immediately not only swept Israel, but it has swept a large part of the entire world, as we were able to see that immediately, Benjamin Netanyahu, which was currently visiting Israel at the time, boarded the plane to return back to Israel immediately. And we are getting information that either the plane has landed and Netanyahu has returned to Israel, or the aircraft is still currently on its way back to Israel, where he will then once again assume the position of taking control of the Israeli Defense Forces and issuing orders and commands that will be coming in the future. We have already seen that while Netanyahu is either in transit to Israel or has just arrived in Israel, that air campaigns by the Israeli Air Force have already begun. And we were able to see that within the area of Sheba, we were able to see that strikes by the Israeli Air Force are already being conducted at this time. And here's a video letting us hear the sounds and a little bit of the explosions themselves near the area of this town in southern Lebanon.
You know, honestly, these look like normal strikes that Israel constantly conducts on the Hezbollah targets. This really doesn't seem like a response to me.
It doesn't really seem like a response yet until you see that this not only spans from the eastern area of Lebanon near to Mount Hermon, it also expands all the way over to Tyre. I believe this is pronounced Tyre or it's pronounced Tyre. We're not entirely sure, but we did get to see that Israeli airstrikes were also being conducted all the way on the western seaboard of the area of southern Lebanon. This one apparently occurred around the area of Tyre. It's actually around Al-Bazare, if we're pronouncing that correctly, which I believe is just a little bit south of Tyre. And let me make sure to go put that in if we can. And so let me see here if I can get that. Let's see. So I think this would be it. And so this actually is just east of the town of Tyre, out in kind of the hills, if you want to call it, of southern Lebanon. From what we understand, these attacks, these airstrikes, are all being conducted by the Israelis south of an area called the Litani River. Many people may or may not know this, but the United Nations actually recognizes Hezbollah within Lebanon and has stated by UN resolution that that Hezbollah will pretty much control the entire area of southern Lebanon south of a river called the Litani River. We can actually see a part of the Litani River right up here in Lake Karun. I believe if I'm pronouncing that correct. And Lake Karun is a reservoir that is built upon the Litani River, which you can actually see right here, which is about the size of a smaller creek. But nevertheless, the United Nations General Resolution declares that anywhere south of the Litani River can be controlled by Hezbollah, and Hezbollah can conduct armed activities within this area. They are forbidden from conducting armed activities outside of this area, and from what we understand, at the moment, Israeli airstrikes are entirely limited to the areas south of the Litani River and are attempting to try and wipe out Hezbollah commanders, Hezbollah forces, their strongholds, maybe some arms caches that have been found by Israeli intelligence, and this may be the preparations for a larger air campaign that may be coming within the next 24 hours, or really at this point, probably within the next 18 hours. We have
That's what I was just about to say as well. It seems like this might be maybe the early stages of like a softening of the proxy forces, because these air attacks, while they are quite spread out, and I would honestly still say that they look pretty routine to me. There's nothing really out of the ordinary with these attacks. They constantly do these. Israel constantly goes out and hits these proxy forces just like this. So they might be biding their time until Netanyahu gets back and he's able to meet with the war cabinet for a final decision. But it really seems like a softening or a shaping operation from what we're seeing.
It does look like that, and I would say also a lot of people have been talking about this. This is actually probably one of the biggest questions before we keep on getting through the news. A lot of people are saying that this is something that will really lead the Israelis to see red and most likely go into Lebanon to wipe out Hezbollah once and for all, south of the Litani River. Although we do know, based off of how Hamas operated within the Gaza Strip, Israel will probably advance all the way to the southern bank of the Litani River. Hezbollah will just move further north, most likely into the area in between Sidon and Beirut, and then we'll see that the Israelis pretty much just continue to push north through Lebanon until they either control a majority of the country or they occupy pretty much the entirety of it as they continue to try and wipe out and destroy the Hezbollah forces within the region. A lot of people have, however, been wondering, will Israel launch a ground invasion over this, or will this be kind of status quo, where we just see that there is a larger amount of air campaigns coming forward in the future against Hezbollah commanders, leaders, and forces within the area of southern Lebanon? And a lot of people have been throwing in an opinion on what is going on here. And Israel has vowed, I want to make this very clear before we even get into the rest of the news that we have tonight, Israel has vowed that there will be an unprecedented response after the Hezbollah attacked and killed Israeli civilians today within the area of the town of Majdet Shams. A lot of people are putting in their thoughts on whether a ground invasion will occur or what those unprecedented responses by Israel will be, and it looks like a lot of people are believing that it will be a full-on ground invasion. Some others are believing that it'll be an airstrike on Iranian proxies, and then others are saying that it may not be nothing at all. Israel may just do nothing in response and leave it be. But loads of people have been throwing in their opinion on this, and it certainly is a contentious topic, as we do know that there is about 18 hours left within a certain window that's been laid out by the U.S. government where an attack will most likely happen, at least according to official statements at this moment. And Matthew, what are people saying about the situation inside of southern Lebanon and what Israel may do? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so now that we're hearing about Israel vowing an unprecedented response to the Hezbollah attacks on Israeli citizens, it looks like 59% of the audience believes that Israel will launch a ground invasion very soon, while 29% said Israel will only airstrike the proxies, and 4% said nothing will happen because it's all talk. And on this one, I am very confident, very, very, very confident that this is not all talk. This is actual action that will be taken in the next 24 hours. It sounds like Israel has had enough, and all the red lines have been crossed by the proxy forces, which is going to force Israel to respond. Because we're hearing statements from the Israeli government, from many different top officials, including the foreign minister, who says that they're approaching the moment of an all-out war against Hezbollah and also Lebanon as well. So even if Netanyahu really wants to take a more neutral approach to this, it's really going to be hard to do that because all of his ministers are saying we should attack them and finish the job right now. So to me, I think something will definitely happen. And also, the U.S. has already greenlit action by Israel toward these proxies inside of Lebanon. So there's currently a ton of Israeli forces right there on the border of Lebanon, and they've been ready to go in for a while. But the reason why they've held back is because the U.S. is currently stonewalling them to a certain extent and trying to talk them out of it. So I think this will be the final feather that breaks the camel's back. So I'm with the 59%. I think a ground invasion will start very soon, and we'll probably see that, like I said, in the next 24 hours. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I do believe that there probably will be some sort. Well, actually, I'm kind of a little bit tied in between the two major options that a lot of people were going for. Some people are saying that it will be a ground invasion, and I can see that possibly happening, but at the same time, we do know that the United States has a very large leaning in what Israel is able to do, and we do know that the United States has been very, very weak-willed with persecuting any group that is anti-Western and actively operating against Western interests, at least in the current present day, which is a bit of an issue because it really ties the hands of the Israelis. It has tied their hands so far, and they've been able to make only limited responses in every single situation where there was a large enough provocation that it could have evolved into a regional conflict. For that reason, I feel, just off of that alone, and then I'll tell you all a caveat to that in a second, I feel like off of that alone, there probably will be a massive air campaign that is conducted by Israel against Hezbollah, but it will not evolve into a full-on ground war marching into the area of southern Lebanon and up to the banks of the Litani. I feel like that is a fairly likely scenario at this moment just because of U.S. involvement and the United States endlessly trying to make sure that the Israelis do not conduct any, I guess what you could say, severe actions in response to Iranian proxy forces. However, we're removing the United States from out of the equation, and we're just saying that the leash has been unloosened or loosened on the Israelis, and they get free reign on what they want to do in response to this attack. We will probably see that the Israelis conduct a large ground campaign into Lebanon. I do want to say this, though, and this has been a little bit of a discussion in between Matthew and me, and also I want to know in the chat what y'all think about this. We have an idea that there is probably a good chance that there will be a ground invasion into Lebanon, but when? When will the Israeli boots and Israeli tanks begin to roll into the area of southern Lebanon and start trying to move their way up to the southern banks of the Litani River? When would that happen? Matthew is saying that it will probably happen by tomorrow. I'm saying that it most likely will happen within the next few weeks because there has to be a sufficient amount of buildup of forces, a sufficient amount of planning, and not only that, there has to be a large air campaign, an artillery campaign, meant to pretty much freeze Hezbollah in place and shock their forces largely to the core by destroying any of their key facilities, such as command centers, logistics hubs, and communication hubs. So that way, when the Israelis move in, their enemies are, well, their enemy, which is Hezbollah, is already so discombobulated and confused by the overwhelming amount of firepower presented before them that it's much easier for the Israeli defense forces to isolate and destroy Hezbollah in detail within different areas of southern Lebanon. Matthew and me have different ideas on that, and I'm wondering, when do y'all think, if y'all think a war is going to happen, an actual ground invasion, when do y'all think a ground invasion would begin? Would it be tomorrow, or would it be within a couple of weeks after a sufficient buildup is made? And also, Matthew, why do you think that it would be tomorrow? Is there something that you're seeing that maybe I'm not seeing that would lead you to believe that a ground invasion would begin within the next 18 hours or so?
So I just want to make it clear, I'm not guaranteeing that a ground invasion will occur in the next 24 hours, but my intuition tells me that because we're hearing statements like an unprecedented response, using weapons that nobody's ever seen before, and also the foreign minister saying that an all-out war is imminent, I would say that all the equipment that's been amassed on the Lebanese border, it's been there for a reason. Israel's been holding back. They've been wanting to invade southern Lebanon for a long time because they know that's the only real way they can go in and snuff out all the terrorists, is to actually go in there themselves on the ground and not simply do airstrikes from a distance. While the airstrikes are important, you have to soften up the targets before you go in on the ground. That is not an end-all. You can't just do airstrikes and call it a day, because all these forces know how to go underground. For example, Hezbollah and all these Hamas terrorists, they go underground to hide, and the airstrike, most of them can't take them out. So you have to go in on the ground. So if we're going to see a ground invasion, my guess will be it'll be very soon, probably in the next 24 hours, if it's going to happen whatsoever. So that's why I'm thinking. I'm thinking over the past couple of weeks, Israel has been taking preparations to get ready for this, and they're just about ready to put it into action.
I would have to say, I see what you're saying there, but for some reason I would believe that this will, like, ground invasion probably will not happen within the next 24 hours because it is too short of a notice to execute any kind of a plan that they may have in place for an invasion of southern Lebanon, because the attack happened today, the United States has given approval, Netanyahu then has to give approval. He also has to meet with the war cabinet and talk to them, or whatever they're calling the war cabinet in Israel. I forgot what it is. It's like the military council or something like that. But he has to talk to the war cabinet. They then come up with a decision, and then Netanyahu issues the order. So at this point, we're already talking about a span of hours, or even longer than that, because Netanyahu has to return from the United States back to Israel. Maybe he's talking to some members of the war cabinet on phone or over some sort of a of a Zoom call, maybe if you want to call it that, but he still will most likely arrive and then talk to them in person and talk it over a little bit more to actually get their plan. And at this point, still, the commanders in northern Israel of the Israeli Defense Forces have not gotten any clear orders issued to them yet to be able to even prepare their forces for a ground invasion tomorrow. Then once the war cabinet comes up with the decision that they are going to go to war with pretty much with Lebanon and invade the southern area, then that order has to be issued by Netanyahu to the generals of the Israeli Defense Forces, who would then disseminate those commands down the chain of command into the lowest echelon of the command, which would most likely be the battalion level. The battalion commanders, just talking about the most basic combat structure of the Israeli armed forces, the battalion commanders would then have to issue orders to their company commanders. Their company commanders would then have to issue orders through the rest of their company, through their NCOs and whatnot, and then they would finally be able to get all of their forces together and get them ready for the invasion. And even then, that would take a decent amount of time, because they then have to go through the battle plan with most of the enlisted that has to be given to the NCOs. All of the NCOs have to be on the same page with their commanding officer within their company. All of the company commanders have to be on the same page as their battalion commander. All the battalion commanders within a brigade have to be on the same level of coordination as their brigade commander is seeing. And then all the brigade commanders come together in the division and finally make sure that all of their battle plans are in line and they're all seeing the big picture on the brigade level, and then, well, actually the division level at that point. And then finally from the division, it reaches back up to the Israeli army, to the generals, and then the generals tell Netanyahu that they are in fact ready and the forces are pretty much prepped for the invasion in the southern Lebanon. All of that takes a decent amount of time, because a military like Israel's, which is fairly large for their size, is a massive and cumbersome apparatus, and it takes some time for things to be done and things to be prepared. Even if it is instantaneous by a military standard, that coordination to be able to get that ready to go may take days. The ground invasion... go ahead.
I get what you're saying on that, and I know it does take some time to put these things into motion, like when you actually try to execute it in reality, instead of just saying, oh, we want to do something. Actually putting that into motion does take some more planning and also some more execution. But one thing I will say is I think Israel has been on its campaign basically trying to convince the United States to get behind them on this. That's what Israel's been waiting for. And for the first time ever, we've heard the U.S. throw their support behind this plan to possibly invade southern Lebanon, according to Israeli news. So I think that's what they've been waiting for, and that's why you've all of a sudden seen Netanyahu making a visit over here to speak in the Congress, is because he's trying to convince everyone over here in the United States, all of our officials, diplomats, and also politicians, to support Israel's move toward these proxy forces. Now that they've gotten the okay and green light from the United States, and they know they're good to go on that front, I think they have the plans already ready to go, and they've simply been looking for permission, and that's it. And now that they have it, they're going to definitely do it.
Maybe so, but still, going off of that, and also talking about a little bit more context, we know that this is the way the Israelis work, and I want to make sure to lay this out, because there is context behind saying it most likely would take days at the quickest, maybe even weeks on an average sort of a speed, to be able to prepare for a ground invasion. And also there's a couple of other things as well that we know are key Israeli stratagems that they use, but we'll get back to that in a second. When the campaign into the Gaza Strip began for the Israelis, we saw a couple of key things. One, the massacre occurred on October 6th, but they did not invade the Gaza Strip by October 8th, or October 7th for that matter. It was a good ways down the road. I believe it was late November or early December by the time Israeli forces began to move into the Gaza Strip in any form of an offensive, even on a limited scope, within the areas of Beit Hanun, in the very northern part of the Strip, the first area where Israeli forces actually crossed the border. It took them an incredibly long time to get ready for that offensive campaign. Even when we saw the massive buildup of Israeli forces on the border of Gaza, they didn't build up and then 2 days later, after their buildup, march in. It took them some time to be able to coordinate their battle plans, like I was saying a moment ago, all the way down at the company level, and then to disseminate that they all understand the plan all the way back up to the army group level, and then to Netanyahu, who would then issue the order for them to proceed with the offensive. Not only that, there are a couple of key things that the Israelis like to do, much like the United States, to make sure that a ground invasion would be far more successful than it would be otherwise. In Ukraine, we don't see this a lot, and so a lot of people have gotten used to armies fighting almost in a World War I-like style, where it's just a artillery barrage, and then you go, and you just hope for the best. That's what everyone's doing in Ukraine currently. But with Israel, and considering that they have air superiority over Lebanon, Israel will most likely want to conduct, even if they have kind of done this already for months at this point, a shock and awe campaign against Hezbollah within the area of southern Lebanon. They will probably be using the Israeli Air Force at great length for weeks on end, maybe days on end at the shortest, to bombard and knock out any Hezbollah command posts, any logistic sites, any ammunition dumps, and any communications hubs that could be used by Hezbollah to mount any form of an effective resistance against the Israeli ground forces. Then the Israeli infantry would still be waiting. The Israeli artillery, however, would start to go to work as well, and the Israeli artillery would begin to clear a specific attack lane for the Israeli forces to advance down. The Israelis would then rapidly advance forward, creating a breakthrough, and while Hezbollah is a guerrilla force, they still would be quite concerned with a breakthrough, and they possibly would be able to cut off groups from communication with each other, especially if their command hubs and communications hubs have been wiped out at this point by the Israeli Air Force and the Israeli artillery. The Israelis can then begin to create pockets within southern Lebanon and slowly work their way into wiping out all Hezbollah forces within these specific pockets in southern Lebanon. They wash, rinse, and repeat this form of strategy until they make it to the Litani River, or until Hezbollah pretty much packs up and moves north of the Litani River, and then they advance unopposed, and then finally they jump over the Litani River and keep advancing north into the rest of Lebanon. That is most likely the way, in my opinion, based off of prior experience with covering how the Israelis dealt with Hamas inside of the Gaza Strip, how they will probably end up dealing with Hezbollah within the area of southern Lebanon. So the weapons that Israel is claiming have not been used yet might be F-35Is, or some form of a glide bomb, or maybe some sort of a guided weapon that has not been used yet against Hezbollah, but it most likely will be a extension of a large air campaign before a ground invasion would begin. Because it would be pretty weird by Israeli standards, and really by Western standards, for Israel to literally just go, okay, go, and then everyone crosses the border tomorrow without trying to wipe out the nerve centers of Hezbollah's armed forces before they even begin a ground offensive. So I mean,
they probably would try to knock out the nerve centers. They probably will. I just think the timing on it is going to be a lot faster than you think. I think it's literally going to be send in the planes, hit the command center, and then the tanks are literally rolling in right behind the strikes. Like, it's going to be that quick, I think. But really, though, if we're going to argue that maybe they're waiting or they're going to pause for something, I would say it wouldn't be because they don't really have a war plan in place. They don't have the ability to execute it on a really fast pace. They're probably waiting to see what their intel is about what Iran's response is going to be if they decide to go into southern Lebanon. Is Iran going to decide to attack Israel en masse and also call on all of their allies to attack Israel? They're probably waiting to see if that's going to be the case as well and try to get some intel on it. So that's probably the better case, in my opinion, for why they'd want to stall this attack. Otherwise, I don't see any reason why they'd stall it, because they've had a long time to draw up war plans, and they've had a very long time to prep their people and also equipment to be ready to go right in.
That's true, but there is historical context to show that ground invasions don't happen instantaneously, even when there is a plan. Like, for example, with the Russian Federation, before they started the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, their forces were built up full strength along the Ukrainian border for a minimum of 2 months, really since late December of 2021, before the ground invasion began, because even after they moved into place, hell, really, honestly, the truth is there was a massive behemoth level plan just to get everyone into place around the Ukrainian border. Then they had to inform everyone on the actual attack plans when the invasion would begin, which took even more time, and that's why they had to sit there for months on end and the tires rotted, because it took them that long for all of them to get on the same page and get ready to go. The same thing was actually seen not just with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, because some people will use this as a caveat, and this is a fairly good one, that the Russians are an incompetent armed force, and it would take them a long time to get anything rolling or anything ready to go. But nevertheless, one thing I would like to make clear is even if that is the case, the Ukrainians, if they wanted to take that as a offensive action, had plenty of time to prepare for the invasion of Ukraine by the Russian Federation. The writing was on the wall really since late 2021. However, the same kind of writing on the wall was there for the Iraqis during the Gulf War of 1991. U.S. forces have built up massively, really coalition forces, not just American forces, had built up massively along the borders of Kuwait and Iraq, along the entire length of the Saudi border. The Iraqis saw this, and they still were not ready for what was to come. And not only that, even still, we sat there for months. Really, well, actually, for us, it was weeks more so. But we sat there for weeks because after we got everyone in place, we had to make sure to hash over all of the battle plans again, make sure everyone was on the same page. And then not only that, we had to wait for everything to link together, not just the ground forces to be able to communicate with each other, but also the Air Force and the ground forces to talk to each other, and then also to integrate Navy assets like aircraft carriers, the Fleet Air Arm, and also the guided weapons off of the destroyers and frigates that we had off the coast of Kuwait at that time. We had to coordinate them with the Air Force and the ground forces as well, and all of that took an incredibly long amount of time, several weeks. And if the Iraqis wanted to, they could have actually started to conduct offensive or preemptive actions against the U.S. forces that had built up in this area before we even began the Gulf War. And even then, after we executed our battle plan for the Gulf War, the ground forces still didn't march across the border immediately. They pretty much just sat and waiting while the United States Air Force and the air forces of the coalition ripped apart the Iraqis from the skies. Then we started a large artillery campaign in the borders around Kuwait and just west of the Kuwaiti border within Iraq, trying to deal with the heavily fortified Iraqi guard corps and also the minefields that were set up there. And then finally, after that overwhelming artillery campaign that was meant as a ruse, the massive trapdoor of the multiple divisions made up of the coalition that were out in the further west of the Saudi Arabian desert swung forward and pretty much created a trapdoor to close off Kuwait. That entire thing took 6 months to execute, for us to begin the first offensive action in the Gulf War and for us to end it with an Iraqi surrender of their armed forces in Kuwait. That was 6 months that battle plan took to unfold, and it was a good few weeks before that even began for us to get everyone in place and then get them on the same wavelength for that plan to then be put in place. Things work very slowly on a military sense. Like, it actually works really quickly when you look at it from a military perspective, but in a real world, day-to-day perspective, it looks monumentally slow. So I may be wrong, and I will be open to being wrong here, but it probably will be days or weeks before we actually see a ground invasion in Lebanon. We will probably see massive air campaigns up until then.
Maybe so. I mean, we'll find out in 24 hours which one of us is correct. And I just want to make it clear. I want to make this clear is that when it actually does not happen or something like that goes on, I'm not guaranteeing that a ground invasion is going to occur in 24 hours. That is my best hunch. That is my guess. That if a ground invasion happens whatsoever, it will be very fast. Because, like I said before, I think they already have this drawn up and they have it ready to go. So if they're going to do it, they're going to do it really quick. And like Andy L pointed out in the live chat earlier, they want to do this while the images, the really horrific images of the children and also the people of Israel getting absolutely mutilated by those missiles that came in or those rockets. They want to let the people know that we're going to respond to it very quickly while that image is still in their heads for obvious reasons, for sort of like governmental reasons. They want to make sure that they are justified for launching such a massive operation. So if it's going to happen, it's going to happen quick, but we'll be either right or wrong in 24 hours.
And we will see. I mean, Matthew and me are both making some very interesting arguments here about when this ground invasion will happen. I think we're both fairly certain that there will be a ground invasion, unless if there's heavy U.S. involvement to the contrary, then we might not see one. But if it's up to the Israelis, it does seem that there will be a ground invasion very soon. However, it's just a matter of time. And so we're trying to discuss how long it would take. It looks like actually most of y'all, we just threw this question up to y'all very soon. Most of y'all are saying that it probably will be within weeks, but we don't really know for certain. I could be entirely wrong by tomorrow when I wake up, and we could actually see that a ground invasion had already begun somehow, in my opinion, by a miracle, but I would still be wrong. However, we could also see that it would take weeks, and we are working off of a fairly conventional and fairly normal timetable for an armed force where they have to do all the kind of planning and prep that I've laid out just a second ago. But still, we will be seeing what's
also, Also, one other thing as well, it can't be underscored, at least in my opinion, that how very unstable this situation can get very quickly. Because, for example, we have Iran, which is once again at play in the situation, and Israel wants to go into Lebanon and invade it and take out the proxy forces that Iran's been funding and also encouraging this entire time. So we do have that factor at play, and Iran has been rumored to be finishing up development of nuclear weapons at the same time this invasion might actually take place. So that is a major factor, which I'm not really sure what's going to happen with that. And like I said, Israel might be waiting to see exactly what Iran is going to do, according to their intelligence, before they invade, because these are the way that world wars start. They can start just like this. If Iran decides to jump in and start attacking Israel, all their proxies start attacking Israel, Israel starts going berserk and having to attack all of them simultaneously, we could have a situation where other powers decide to step in. Like, for example, if we step in and start defending Israel, we could see Russia step in and start defending Iran because that is their partner in crime. So this could get very wild very quickly, depending on how it goes.
That is very true. And we are seeing that not only is this a very shaky sort of a situation at the moment, it is already involving the United States' armed forces, at least within the last few hours, as we have heard that Iranian-backed proxies are once again, for the third day in a row, attacking U.S. bases within the area of the Conoco oil fields. The Conoco oil fields are within this area of Eastern Syria. This is actually a fairly accurate map of what the area looks like, so let me quickly tell you all what this is. This area in yellow here in Eastern Syria is actually the Syrian Democratic Forces, a faction involved in the Syrian civil war that is anti-Assad and is largely American aligned. U.S. forces have been stationed here for an incredibly long time in small garrisons and facilities to try and assist the Syrian Democratic Forces in their fight against Assad's government within Western Syria. And that brings us to the area in orange. This area in orange is actually controlled by the Assad regime, Bashar al-Assad of pre-Syrian civil war fame for how brutal he was and iron-handed he was against the Syrian people. The areas in purple are controlled by Turkey. Those are actually security zones that the the Turks made, where they invaded not only Assad-controlled Syria, but also Syrian Democratic Forces, therefore Western-aligned Eastern Syria. And then this little area in green up here and down here are controlled by the United States or coalition forces as some form of a security perimeter or a safe zone. This is actually the top perimeter in this area, and Tower 52 is exactly right there. That's where the attack happened that killed three U.S. service members several months ago. The Al-Amar oil field is also another oil field that the United States has forces at. But nevertheless, we need to get back to Conoco. That's the important one that we're talking about right now. The Conoco oil fields are just outside of the town of Deir ez-Zur, and we can actually see them out here a little bit when we zoom in. You can actually see all the little service roads that they have, and we can also see some of the actual oil wells. If I look around good enough, we should be able to find them. And I cannot find them. They are so difficult to find in the desert. They are so easy. Wait a minute, here we go. Here, no, that's... Where in the hell are they? Like, they were so easy to find before stream. Like, I went and looked at them, and now I can't find them at all. That's bizarre, actually. That is so weird. But beyond that, the Conoco oil fields are out here. It's just that I'd be damned, I just cannot find them while I'm looking for them on stream. But it is right outside of Deir ez-Zur and right across the Euphrates River. It's within SDF control. However, U.S. forces continuously have been attacked at the Conoco oil fields for 3 straight days now, and we are seeing that those attacks are not relenting at this moment. We are also getting news that there is a fire at one of the small garrisons within the oil field, which we were able to see on film. This was filmed apparently by a Syrian local who was watching the fire rage inside the garrison. We do not have any reports from the United States Department of Defense of any wounded or dead U.S. service members, and if that was the case, we would expect those announcements most likely within 48 to 72 hours of such an event.
I will say, though, that even though publicly the U.S. military has not acknowledged any casualties, we did hear reports from on the ground that there were helicopters, U.S. aircraft, and also other helicopters as well, heard in the area. So I'm not sure if those were medevac or what they were, but there were a lot of aircraft flying around while this was happening.
That's actually a very good point, man. That actually brings us on to our next bit of news, because we did hear that the sounds of U.S. Aircraft, apparently rotary wing aircraft, was heard in the area. According to OSINT Defender, U.S. aircraft and helicopters could be heard over the city of Deir ez-Zor, just beside the Conoco oil fields in eastern Syria. Following the targeting of American troops at both the U.S. coalition base in the Al-Amar oil fields and the MSS Euphrates in the Conoco gas field earlier by rockets fired by Iranian-backed proxies. We do not know what these rotary wing aircraft, what the helicopters were in the area for. Some people, like Matthew, are suggesting that they may have been medevac helicopters, which is a very high likelihood, as that would be one of the few times that we would probably see rotary wing aircraft arrive in somewhat larger numbers as to try and evacuate any wounded that may have been sustained at that small garrison. Those most likely would have actually been brought in from the area of western Iraq and may have actually taken off from within the area of Jordan, flown through western Iraq, and then up into the area of Deir ez-Zor to pick up the wounded and then take them back into an area like I believe it's the Victory airbase at Baghdad or Al-Assad airfield within western Iraq, to then be airlifted to another place like Ramstein in Germany for them to receive medical treatment or something else along those lines. But nevertheless, it does seem as though the U.S. forces are under a constant state of attack at the moment by Iranian-backed proxies, which is already showing, whether people like it or not, that the United States is being dragged into the rising tensions within the region, even though we are trying as hard as possible to stay out of the situation. But it is still a very dangerous one. And we've also heard that the United States government, and someone earlier in the live chat saw this, they said, where the hell are these guys getting the idea that something's going to happen within 24 hours? Well, we get it from this right here, because the United States did approve an operation by the United States against Hezbollah, and from what we understand, that will be happening within 24 hours. We have one of those statements here on our Twitter. I'm going to look around really quickly for it, because we do have one where it says within 24 hours, and so we are trying to find it. It is somewhere on our page. I didn't include that one because I didn't think I would have to go and find the proof, but we will find the proof. And so let's see here.
It might be a good ways down. It was one of the, I think one of the first ones I retweeted on the topic.
Let's see here. Here we go. The President of the United States was briefed on the Hezbollah massacre in Majd al-Shams. The Americans expect an Israeli response within 24 hours, and that is according to a source that was sourced from somewhere within the government. But it does seem as though some action will be taken within the next 24 hours against the Hezbollah forces within southern Lebanon. But still, the situation is very strained. It is incredibly difficult at this moment, and of course we are dealing with a situation where a large amount of Israeli citizens ended up getting killed in a Hezbollah attack. And a lot of people are still wondering, when will that invasion of Lebanon be? If one was to happen, and Israeli forces were to move into southern Lebanon and attempt to completely destroy any Hezbollah forces within the south of the Litani, when would that be? Some people are saying that it'd be within 24 hours. Others are saying that it'd be within weeks. Some people are saying that they wouldn't invade, and others are unsure if anything's going to happen at all. But a lot of people have been throwing in their opinions on this matter. And Matthew, what are people saying, and what are people thinking about a possible invasion? Would it happen within hours, weeks, or will they not invade at all?
So it looks like only 13% of the audience said that they will not invade whatsoever, while 13% were undecided, and at 42%, the most popular option said within weeks, and at 32% said within 24 hours. And obviously, we've beat this dead horse into the ground quite significantly on this topic right here. So I'm in the camp that says within 24 hours, and the enforcer says within weeks. So only time will tell, and they're really just good best guesses based on what we know at the moment. Obviously, we can't really crystal ball into the future. Nobody really knows what's going to happen, because one thing that is a certainty about the Middle East is nothing is 100% predictable. It's really unpredictable in the Middle East, and things change rapidly. In fact, they change so rapidly, it's hard to even keep up with the news on it. So once again, I'm with the 32%, but Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I am with the 42%. It most likely will happen within weeks. I'm not really sure if a lot of people voted for that because I explained how a military works, or if just a lot of people think that 24 hours is a really short timetable. I'm not really sure which one it was that led a lot of people to vote for that, but I would still be within the concept of it being weeks. No matter how gung-ho the Israelis are to conduct some sort of action against Lebanon, there is a realistic limiter to how quickly they can operate, and that limiter is people themselves. And anyone who's ever been in a managerial position will understand that getting everyone on the same page takes a long amount of time. And especially when you look at military history, getting everyone on the same page is either impossible or it takes a wildly long amount of time for everyone to get on the same page. I mean, hell, wars have been lost because people wouldn't get on the same page or people misunderstood each other. So a lot of people say that the reason why, just to go into a little bit more of a historical background on how important communication is and how long it takes for communication to work. During the early days of the U.S. Revolutionary War, when the Continental Army was around the area of Boston, for large part, not really Boston, but really Massachusetts and New England as a whole, there was an actual plan brought forward by the commanding forces of the British in Boston, and also the commanding forces of the British in New York, and the commanding forces of the British within Quebec and Montreal, is that they would both march down the Hudson River, one from the north, one from the south. They would meet in the middle at Fort Ticonderoga, and they would pretty much be able to cut the U.S. Revolution in two, pretty much off the bat. And if they had done that, the Revolutionary War would have been very difficult to fight for the Continental Army at that point, or it may have been completely lost if that was executed. These two generals discussed this plan for months. Like, I'm not kidding. It was all the way through the spring and then into the summer. And then finally, by the late summer, they were going to be executing this plan. The general in New York started to march north along the Hudson River. The one in the north just did whatever the hell he wanted. He did not march south, and I believe he ended up actually trying to march somewhere further down and towards where Syracuse is nowadays, something along those lines. But that was one of the reasons why the American Revolution, at least within its early years, went so well, is because both of these generals were communicating with each other for months about, here is going to be our plan. This is what the plan is going to be. It is a brilliant plan. We will win. And then they literally just either didn't communicate enough, or someone got a little arrogant, and then they just went and did something else, and they pretty much lost the entire American Revolutionary War within the first 2 years of the conflict. So once again, kind of giving the idea, either it's really hard to get people on the same page, or it's impossible to get them on the same page. So it takes a lot of time to do that, and that's why I'm saying it'll take weeks, just as another historical example right there. But moving on from that, and on into the rest of the news that we have, we still have a lot of news to cover, and we still have a lot of a Ukraine war segment to cover. We're now going to be moving on over into North Korea for a quick moment, because we were able to hear today, and this was a very interesting little side note, that a 2.9, almost a 3.0 magnitude earthquake was registered in North Korea a few minutes ago. This was about 12 hours, well, not 12 hours ago, that was about 9 hours ago, right next to the Pyongyang nuclear test site within the area of northeastern North Korea, which is...
Oh, Kim Jong-un must have been visiting.
Dude, he must have tripped and fell or something, because it's a 3.0 on a Richter scale. That is quite some mass right there hitting the ground or something. But beyond that, one thing has been said. A lot of people have actually been hypothesizing what this could be. Some people are saying it may be seismic activity because the area has been unsettled from prior nuclear testing. To be quite honest, that would be a little bit tough to believe, because usually we don't see seismic activity becoming increased due to nuclear testing. If that was the case, the United States Southwest would be earthquake hell within Arizona and New Mexico, where a lot of our and also Nevada, where a lot of our nuclear testing was conducted in the past. We would see a lot of seismic activity, and we really don't. We do see a lot of seismic activity, however, in California, but that's because of the San Andreas Fault, and it's literally on a fault line, so earthquakes are fairly common within that area because of a fault line. However, from what I understand, I do not believe that North Korea is on any kind of a tectonic plate. I actually believe it's Japan, and we can actually see the edge of it right here, that is along a tectonic plate, and so North Korea would be largely seismically stable. So the chances of a 3.0 earthquake happening like that would be a little bit uncommon. It wouldn't be unheard of, but it would be a little bit more uncommon. With the fact that it happened near a nuclear test site, there is the possibility that they did conduct some sort of a nuclear test today, and that was the seismograph picking up that nuclear test. if the North Koreans test a nuclear weapon inside of their country, they usually don't have to announce that really to anyone. They usually, from what I understand, don't. And so we kind of just get the tremors or the aftermath, and we have to piece together if something happened there. The fact that it happened pretty much at Pyongyang near the nuclear test site leads us to believe that it may have possibly been, and I don't want to say it's a certainty. This is a possibility and probably an unlikely one, that they may have been testing or conducting a test on a brand new nuclear weapon. Possibly a warhead that'll be fitted onto their brand new multiple independent re-entry vehicle platform that they are building for one of their newer Hwasong intercontinental ballistic missiles. We don't know that for sure, though. That's a lot of a massive hypothesis on my end, but I would say that that's maybe a possibility, although a little unlikely.
It could be, because, typically North Korea likes to do their nuclear tests during pretty big events that are happening around the world. And right now, there's obviously a ton of massive events happening. But the big one is the Olympics right now. That's one thing the West is really focusing on. And it would be an opportune time for the North Koreans to come back out and test another nuclear weapon. But the only catch is this, though. That's a pretty small magnitude of an earthquake for a nuclear test, because I believe the last time they did one, a nuclear test that is, it registered much higher than that. I think it was like a 7 magnitude or something like that. It was much larger. So unless they're testing a significantly smaller nuke, then this is a rather small test fire right here.
Let's see here. I'm trying to see if we can, what seismic waves. Let's see here. I'm trying to see what does, let's see.
Let's see. I see right here, it says, for comparison, North Korea's last nuclear test in 2017 caused a 6.1 magnitude earthquake, and it was believed to be upwards of a 250 kiloton bomb. So that's actually pretty sizable, 250 kilotons, and it caused a 6 magnitude. So this one would have to be significantly smaller to cause only a 2.9.
I would say, this is my theory. Maybe they were trying to test because, like, with the MIRVs. Let me go find one in my RV so that way I can, oh, what the hell is that? Let me type in MIRV over here so that way I can show you all this. And MIRV uses a different shaped warhead than a normal nuclear weapon. Each warhead for each nuclear weapon is special, well, pretty much purpose built for that specific missile and that specific delivery system. But the MIRV, which we can see right here, has a special kind, usually in the United States, of a conical shaped warhead that are scattered in multiple numbers. What this thing does, well, how a MIRV works, is that an intercontinental ballistic missile launches itself pretty much into space. The second stage separates, well, the first or second stage separates, and this little platform right here that all of these warheads are on tilts itself back down towards the surface of the Earth, and it actually gives a little explosive charge, which gives these things a push to each one of these different warheads, so that way that one missile can actually hit multiple different targets at the same time. This one, in particular, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, maybe 10. This one can actually carries about 10 from what I can count nuclear warheads, meaning that this one missile can actually end up hitting about 10 different targets because it has 10 different warheads. And that may be something that the North Koreans were trying to test out today, is if a specific kind of a warhead in a MIRV would work. And instead of giving it a full yield, they gave it like a lower yield just to see if the shape and the design would work for their newer MIRV systems that they said recently they were getting close to perfecting.
It could be. I mean, that's a possibility as well. But one thing I can't help but think, and this is speculation, I want to make that clear, but considering how close Russia and North Korea's relationship is getting, because Russia is very desperate for equipment and weaponry that apparently North Korea somehow found out of nowhere, I wonder if maybe Russia has given them that nuclear technology that we had heard about in the past. Remember, they were just promised nuclear technology in exchange for weaponry. That was part of the deal that even Putin acknowledged publicly. So this could be possibly a test of maybe a smaller warhead or a tactical nuke that maybe Putin handed over to the North Koreans as payment for the equipment.
Maybe so. Maybe it's that the Russians have pretty much already speed-tracked a North Korean development program, and so they're now testing the end result of what the Russians and North Koreans jointly came up with. Maybe the North Koreans were really close to having a warhead for a MIRV. The Russians stepped in and said, oh, here's what you need to do. And then they just sorted it out really quickly and put in a low yield for a test and tested one of them out to see if they work.
That could be. That could be. Also, I see Andy L said North Korea doesn't have a delivery package. Now, I think he's talking about the MIRV, by the way. And do we know if they have one or not? I know they have the delivery system for the larger warheads because they've tested those before, and they've splashed down near Japan multiple times. And also, they've fired one out into the sea. But, do they have the MIRV delivery system?
That's what they're currently working on right now, and that's why I think that they're testing out the warheads, because now that they have a usable warhead for a MIRV, or maybe they've already started to work on the MIRV platform itself, they're now working on the warheads themselves, and they're going to test out the MIRV with the actual system and with dummy warheads on board, or maybe a real warhead or two on the system, so that way they can test it out maybe over the Sea of Japan and see if it works or not. That's probably what they're doing, because right now, from what we know, they have never successfully tested or even attempted to test with a MIRV system. So I think at this point they're probably putting all the pieces together so that way they can give a attempt to trying to use a MIRV. So maybe they're working on the warheads right now. Maybe they are working on the MIRV itself as a whole and seeing how it will work. But no, they do not have a usable one at the moment. But when they get one, they do have a missile that can carry it with the Hwasong 18. All of the North Korean ICBMs are called Hwasongs. They're just numbered differently. And from what we know, this is one of the intercontinental ballistic missiles that would be MIRV worthy. If they ever have a working MIRV, they'll probably put it on this thing, and that means that it will be able to reach the United States in a single Hwasong going off of this MIRV system that we're seeing here, which is most likely American. Could probably hit 10 separate targets within the United States with a single Hwasong 18. Which is a little concerning, but it does look like they're developing that ability. But with that,
sadly, there's really nothing that we can do about it. I saw someone in the live chat a minute ago say, "What can the West do about this to stop it?" Well, that's the catch. Really, nothing, because North Korea is a nuclear power, and also there's really no way to punish them because North Korea is a hermit kingdom, and they're already sanctioned to hell and back. So there's really nothing for the West to really do here. We're simply at the mercy of the madman at the helm in North Korea. So if he decides to develop more nukes, delivery systems, or whatever, we simply have to sit back and watch and hope that he doesn't go over the deep end. That's contrary to Iran, though, which right now apparently does not have a nuclear weapon, but might be really close to finishing up development of it. We could stop that, but it looks like we're going to let that go as well and not stop it. So sooner or later, we'll have a North Korea and also an Iran, which is a rogue state with nukes, which is already bad enough with North Korea, but we'll probably have another one very soon.
I would agree with that completely, and I think that we should be doing stuff to limit the availability of nuclear weapons worldwide, especially for rogue governments or highly unstable ones like the Islamic Republic of Iran and also the DPRK. But moving on from that and into the Russian Federation, we have finally made it full circle. We have had an entire hour in 17 minutes actually of uninterrupted Middle East and East Asia news. It is now time for us to finally move on into Ukraine, and we still have a lot of news here. But before we get to that, I do want to answer a couple of questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so hopping into our first super chat of the night, we have a very generous $75 donation from Purple Gerbil, the channel legend, and thank you very much, Purple Gerbil, for that support. He said, "Do you think the incidents, let's see, Taiwan, Ukraine, Cuba fleet, and the Alaskan bombers are trying to disperse American forces to weaken them somewhere and prelude to a major attack in LSA forever?"
And thank you for the massive support, Purple Gerbil. And I would have to say that I don't think they're trying to disperse American forces, Purple Gerbil. That is an interesting idea. But what they're probably trying to do is more so a form of low-level coercion. It's usually non-war military activities, is what the Chinese call, which is NWMA. They are usually conducting these activities not with the idea of trying to spread American forces or position themselves into a good position for a conventional war. It is a way to try and get the American public scared, because they understand, much like we understand, how media works. And whenever a bomber comes flying near the U.S. border, there is always going to be a news company out there going, "Oh, the Russians, they're going to kill us all!" And then the American public goes, "They're going to kill us all! We have to avoid this at all costs! Mr. President, back away! Back away! Don't let them!" And then it ends up causing public pandemonium and fear. And so what that is, by a technical definition, is a form of coercion and a form of low-level coercion, because they're not actually conducting armed actions, they're just trying to insinuate that there is a possibility of some form of armed action, or just planting the idea in the citizenry's mind in America that there could be armed action. Like, you know, for example, we know this, the Russian flotilla that is coming to Cuba is woefully under-equipped, and not only that, the Russians don't have any form of logistical mean to be able to keep their vessels running right off of the coast of Cuba and near Florida. That is an entirely fictitious idea. The Russians could never actually do something like that, but most of the American public doesn't know that, and no one tells the American public that either. What the American public hears, for the most part, is that Russian warships are off the coast of Florida. That's all they hear. And so they hear Russian warships, and let me guide y'all through what the Russians are expecting from the American public, because it's a fairly, like, it's almost like a binary equation. There's an input and there's an output. They input one warship off the coast of Florida that's sailing nearby. That outputs a mindset in the American public that there is a Russian warship, and a lot of people think warships are wildly powerful, that could kill a lot of people, and it's sailing right off the coast of a major American city, which is Miami. This warship could start firing on the American coast and start killing loads of people, and the American military isn't doing anything. It almost looks like to some Americans that the Russians have pretty much all the leeway above us. They don't know about international waters. They don't know any of that stuff. They just know that there's some deadly ship off the coast run by the Russians, and that's going to start freaking people out that don't know a lot about the Russian military, or what international waters are, or what international maritime law is, or what they're actually doing, or how bad off these ships are. The fact that they needed a tug last time gives you an idea that they're not really that competent of a navy. But nevertheless, no one knows that really on the large part, so they're just going to get scared. And then that fear is going to start spreading around in America, like on places like Twitter. And of course, people pay attention a lot to what people say on Twitter, because it's kind of like the modern day form of the radio, or the modern day form of the TV. So anything that's voiced or said on the most common media platform, it's going to be something that weighs in heavily on government decision making. And so then the US government sees the American citizens are scared. They're scared of this Russian warship. So then, because of that, the US president has to go, well, I can't take certain kinds of actions because the public is already scared. And if we take certain kinds of aggressive actions, they're going to freak out because they're going to think that that Russian warship off the coast of Florida is about to literally blow up all of Florida and kill everyone in it. So now my hands are kind of tied, and I have to kind of whittle my way around the situation, because otherwise the American public is going to freak out on me, and that's not going to end up going well. And so that's what the Russians, the Chinese, and everyone is trying to achieve with those actions. I picked the Russian warships as one example, but they're trying to do the same thing with the bombers flying off of the Alaskan coast, and every other action that they make. It's a form of low-level coercion like that, and they're attempting to try and get into the minds of Americans and freak them out, which will not only paralyze the public, but it may even paralyze government decision-making, because they're scared of public backlash by some decisions that they may want to make, but the public may not like because of their understanding of the situation. So I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion, Purple Gerbil, because that's usually how I look at things, because usually everyone isn't trying to set themselves up for war. Most military actions are meant to try and avoid war, like those. Like, they're trying to scare America so much that we don't do anything and no war happens, but they still get to achieve what they want around the rest of the world. That's kind of what that is aiming to do, at least in my opinion. Maybe it's trying to spread out U.S. forces. I'm not saying that's impossible, but I usually look at those sorts of things as a form of coercion, and hopefully I explained it well enough to where maybe people might still disagree, but y'all can kind of see where I'm coming from with that. But still, thank you so much once again for that massive support, Purple Gerbil, and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, please pardon the poll that I had to repost there. The autocorrect got it right as I was pressing submit to put the poll up. It got it, and I had to repost it. So that's why you saw a second one suddenly pop up. But with that, we're moving on to our second super chat, and this one goes to 655, who puts in a $50 donation, and huge shout out for that support as well. They said, thanks for all the top tier coverage, and a live chat question, please.
And thank you so much, 655, for enjoying all of that top tier coverage. And thank you for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. I know tonight we have a lot of new viewers with us. We have had 56,000 views so far on the stream, and it's only an hour and 20 minutes in. And I gotta say, really quickly, not only for you, 655, but for everyone new who's watching tonight, I've got to thank you for supporting this channel, just like Purple Gerbil and just like everyone else who super chatted tonight. Many of the new viewers who have gotten on may notice that there is no ads that play when you click on the stream, and there are no sponsors on the stream either. That is because this channel is an ad-free, sponsor-free channel on these live streams. When we run these every single night, which is our job, we do not make a single cent running the live stream itself. The only way we're able to make a living and do this as a job, getting to report this news to y'all on what's going on around the world, is through super chatters like Purple Gerbil and 655. And those folks alone are very few in number. There's maybe 30 of them at most every single night out of 110, 120,000 people that watch this stream. Only about 30 people support the channel with a super chat. But those 30 people make it possible for us to do this as a job and make it possible for this channel to survive every single day on air and to keep covering the news. And that's why we always give a massive amount of thanks and a massive shout out to everyone who supports this channel, because if it wasn't for them, you wouldn't be able to get on this stream and watch it at all, and much less without ads and sponsors, and also sponsors dictating to us what we can talk about and what we can't talk about, because that's usually a caveat of having some specific kinds of sponsors or being sponsor friendly. And so I've got to give a huge shout out to you, 655, for enjoying this news, because you actually help us to make this thing possible day by day with that kind of support, and I am massively appreciative of that. Matthew is as well, and we will make sure to take a live chat question in your honor, 655. And so what do we got from the live chat, Matthew?
All right, and this live chat question, which is sponsored by 655, is going to go to Purple Gerbil, who says, how large is the Israeli Air Force, and do they have bombers?
The Israeli Air Force is very large. I can already tell you off the bat, I don't think they have any bombers, but let me make sure to double check. So, let's see. Oh yeah, by the way, do y'all know, as a kind of like a sort of an irony, the first planes in the Israeli Air Force were actually a form of Messerschmitt 109, which is what the Nazi Germans used in World War II.
That's kind of a little bit interesting, considering the history of all that.
Yeah, so you've got a pretty much German-designed Messerschmitt 109 used by the Nazis in World War II, and then you got a Star of David roundel on it. It is like the most ironic thing ever. That irony was not missed upon the first Israeli pilots, by the way, because there's documentaries out there of them, and a lot of them mention that. They're like, man, the first planes we flew were like Nazi planes. But anyways, moving on from that, the modern Israeli Air Force isn't using Bf-109s from World War II. They actually have a very incredible amount of aircraft. They have F-15s, F-16s, and F-35I Deers. They also have some F-35As as well. But they have a decent amount of combat aircraft. They have a lot of F-16s. They have 175 of them. They have 66 F-15s and about 39 F-35s with another 36 on the way. They have some AWACS. They have a... what the hell? So hang on. Yeah, they have some AWACS. These are AWACS. I don't know why they're calling them AE, W, and C. Usually they're just called AWACS. But then they also have the Gulfstream G550s as well, which are fitted out for that role. They have some reconnaissance aircraft, pretty much more private jets, and a really, really nice Super King Air. I like those. And they also have some tankers, the Boeing 707. Apparently they're getting some new Pegasus, which are really cool. They're made out of kind of like, well, I want to say an A330, but I just read it's actually a 767. Really beautiful plane. And then they have
why does such a small country like Israel really need all this equipment? Isn't this just like excessive? Like, why does Israel need this?
Well, I actually,
man, that was a joke. That was a joke.
I was about to be like, well, actually, they need it because, like, historically, they're
at war with everybody.
Yeah, they've always been at war with almost everyone around them. The modern day is a little different. Nowadays, they're really only at war with Hamas and Hezbollah. It's actually one of the most easy times to live in Israel, believe it or not, because you don't have Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and let me think who else there was. let me think. Dang, it wasn't Saudi. I think Saudi Arabia actually was involved too at a point, trying to kill you. Now it's just really Hezbollah and Hamas, and everyone else is kind of leaving them alone or is kind of friendly with them now. But they still need a fairly large standing force just because of the historic reason. But anyways,
Man, you were about to go in deep on that too. You're about to give me a whole like complex answer on that. But no, seriously though, like Israel is armed to the teeth for a reason. That country's been attacked by literally everybody, and for whatever reason, they just get hatred from pretty much every side of their borders, which is wild to see. And they've defended themselves very good with all this equipment. Obviously, they have a ton of funding and support from the United States and their allies. But ultimately, it comes down to their fighting spirit, just like Ukraine. It doesn't matter how much equipment they get. If they don't want to fight, they don't want to fight, and they're not going to win. So Israel's really good about that.
And also, really quickly, to answer the original question, they do not have a bomber like a B-1 Lancer or a B-2 Spirit or, hell, a B-52. They don't have anything like that because the Israeli air war situation is one that does not support those kinds of strategic bombers, because Israel is such a small country that if anyone has a competent air defense system like an S-400, the B-52s, when they're taking off, are already within SAM distance, meaning they are getting shot down pretty much right when they're taking off. So instead of doing that, they'd rather have a lot more smaller and maneuverable aircraft, not only because they don't need strategic bombers for strategic reasons. Most of what the Israeli Air Force is used is for tactical situations at a smaller level, like close air support missions and things along those lines. And so a strategic bomber wouldn't really be needed for them. So they don't have one. They just have all of the coolest of American aircraft, the F-35s, the F-16s, and the F-15s, which in my personal opinion are my three favorite aircraft that are currently in service with the modern U.S. Armed Forces. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can and give an answer to that live chat question. And thank you so much once again, 655, for the support and helping this channel keep it running. So not only can we answer really interesting questions like that, but we can also keep this channel running. And so a huge thank you so much once again. William Grant said, S-400? Competent? Well, not in the Ukraine sense, but shooting down a strategic bomber, oh hell yeah. Like, the S-300s and the S-400s were designed to shoot down high-flying aircraft, so they would excel at shooting down a B-52. No doubt about that. And also the way a B-52 would have to work to avoid getting shot down would be bizarre. Like, you would be flying those things, you'd be flying a massive commercial-sized airliner pretty much at treetop level, out, balls to the wall, through Israel, and then into the Eastern Mediterranean, so that way then it can climb in altitude out here in the Eastern Mediterranean, turn around, fire off some missiles at Hezbollah or Syria or whoever, and then it would have to dive again rapidly and descend very quickly in the Eastern Mediterranean, and then fly pretty much balls to the wall at treetop level all the way back to its airbase in Israel. And that kind of an implementation of a bomber would just make no sense, and also the cost of maintaining them would make no sense, having to use that kind of a doctrine. But I hope that does address that well, because that was a good question about the S-300 and the S-400. But I hope that was a good answer. And with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the news and finally getting to the Ukraine war.
And this last one here goes to Andy L., who's also a longtime channel legend, who puts in a $40 donation. And thank you very much, Andy, for that very generous support once again. And he says, please take a question from the chat, and long live the LSA.
And long live the LSA, baby! And thank you so much for the support, Andy L., once again tonight, and helping this channel keep on running. And we will make sure to grab a live chat in your honor. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
And this one goes to Sergeant Carnage, who asks a very good question. He said, do you really think that Russia has the ability to have a two-front war at the moment? Meaning that if Iran calls on their buddy Russia to help them in the Middle East to attack Israel, does Russia really have the ability to help out while they're fighting the war in Ukraine?
I actually believe that they may. But it's in a very limited sense. Conventionally on a ground level, absolutely not. And they really have no way to get to Israel on a ground forces level to fight them head on, unless they try to do it through Syria, and even then that'd be fairly difficult, because if the Russians said we're getting directly involved in the defense of Iran and their proxies, they would have to fly either into Iran and then find a way into Syria, which would be impossible. So that means that they would have to fly in everyone into Syria, and the Russians don't have a massive airlift capacity like America does, and not only that, they have now openly declared that they're a belligerent, and so the Israelis would probably end up shooting down a lot of the Russian aircraft that were attempting to fly into Syria at that point, and probably end up shooting down a lot of the forces that were meant to actually fight Israel on the ground. So the chances of them actually being able to fight Israel on a ground forces level would be a little unlikely. However, they could try and fight them on an Air Force level with their strategic bombers and fire standoff weapons from the area of Iran across the Middle East and into Israel, although that most likely would not succeed. They most likely would have most of those missiles fired, shot down, because unlike Ukraine, which is working with whatever they can get, Israel has the cream of the crop. I mean, they truly are a modern military by all means, and so they would be able to deal with any Russian missiles fired their way and shoot them down and destroy them before they ever really hit Israel in any kind of a devastating or damaging form. So the answer to that question is yes, in an air war campaign, they probably could fight the Israelis, but on a ground war level, Israel would be fairly safe. And there really is no way for them to really threaten Israel from the ground unless if somehow they ended up winning an air war against Israel, which is highly unlikely considering that the Israelis do have F-35s that could fill the air-to-air role, meaning the Russians would never even pick up a decent amount of Israel's air defense on radar to even be able to engage them. It would be a turkey shoot above Syria, and so they would never be able to get into a ground war just for that reason alone. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion, at least from what I know. And thank you once again, Andy L, for sponsoring that live chat, and once again, much like many tonight, helping this channel to keep on running. And speaking of running, the Russian Air Force is not really running that well anymore. We actually got to hear that an Su-34 ended up crashing near the area of Volgograd. Here's a picture of an Su-34. Here is the cloud of smoke coming from its remains near Volgograd. These things did not bode that well, and we also got to see a video of the crash site, and that thing was smoldering. I mean, it turned into a crater when it hit the ground. Let me see.
I like how people just show up and walk around the crash site like it's just like a tourist trap or something.
Man, you know, they're like people from the olden times, man. You know, like from like the 1800s where they'd hear, "Blimey, governor, there's a fire going on across town," and then they go, "Well, hell, that's the most exciting thing that's happened all week. I better go take a gander." And then they go over there and watch the fire on the other side of town or something. Russians are kind of like that, you know?
Wow, it really did a number out here. That was apparently a very big fire.
Yeah, I'm telling you. Oh, man. You see some of the parts of the aircraft that are left in the giant crater it made. But yeah, it looks like that Su-34 ended up having a bit of a problem. Very sad to see, but the Tu-22 M3s up near Ryazan were having bigger problems today as a Ukrainian drone attack targeted the airfield, and from what we know, Russian air defense was completely absent. We did get to see explosions at the airfield. We got to see it in multiple different pictures, these three right here. We also got to see the explosion, or at least hear it right there. And then finally, we have a video of the actual drone flying over.
Man, it always trips me out when I see that particular drone right there, that Ukrainian one. It looks like it's flying backwards the whole time.
Kind of does. It's built like a Wright Flyer almost, you know, like with how they had like the elevators in front of the wings. Like, it's like, that is a jank looking little drone, but it works. And it hit them pretty hard today too. And from what we've heard...
And the big question is, what the hell's air defense doing? Not a single shot from anything on the Russian side while it's flying straight over their heads.
Yeah, literally no shots were fired. From what we heard, one Tu-22 was hit dead on by the drone. We don't know if others were damaged. We've heard rumors that there may have been several Tu-22 M3s that may have been knocked out or damaged at the airfield, but we haven't been able to get any picture or video evidence of that. All we've been able to hear is that the Defense Intelligence Service of Ukraine said that one Tu-22 M3 was hit, and that's all we're able to confirm at this point, because that's an official government statement, and that does count as proof on this channel. Moving on from that and into Moscow, we also got to see that, and let me make sure I get this man's title correct, Andrei Torgashov, the deputy head of the Satellite Communications Center of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, apparently had a visit from the Irish Republican Army today. Take a look. He's walking around, you just hear in the distance, "Come out, you black and tans, come out and fight me like a man. Show us how show your wife how you won medals back in Flanders." Oh. And then the car bomb went off. It's the
Oh,
IRA.
damn. Wait a minute. Did he jump in the front driver's seat and close the door and then it went off? Let's see that again.
Let's see here. So
Okay,
he
he
closed
put
the door.
something in the back right there. Closed the back door. Then he's sitting in the car.
No, I think that's a cut, Matthew, right there. A camera
Oh,
cut.
okay.
Yeah. But it blew up. The car bomb went off.
Somebody must have been watching from a distance and then set it off like with a trigger or something, and it wasn't just timed to like when the door opened because it looked like he sat in there for a minute before it went off.
Yeah, maybe so. I couldn't tell if he actually got in the car or what, or if he was just fiddling around and then wandered off. I can't really tell. But yeah, that's a very interesting thing. I did not know that the IRA was not only active in Northern Ireland, but it was also active in Russia. But here we are. I mean, the car bombs are back out in business. And that reminds me, Matthew, of this inspirational quote, Matthew. I think you may have heard this one before. You have to get lucky every time, but we only have to get lucky once.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Uh-huh. You know who that inspirational quote came from, Matthew?
Who's that?
The IRA itself.
Oh, well then. But also, by the way, about this car blowing up, I see that it looks like Melanie said it connected when he attempted to start the car. And he was indeed inside the car because I also saw many people in the live chat say that. And I saw that yesterday as well. He was in there when it blew up. So maybe it was connected to the ignition because that would line up. Or maybe someone was sitting nearby and maybe triggered it at the same time. But it could have been an ignition bomb of sorts that took him out.
Man, I'm telling you what, though, the somewhere out there, Matthew, some guy, some Irish provo is sitting there smiling. He's going, "That's it, me boys, you learning," or something like that. He's like, "There you go, you learned a lesson or two." But moving on from that and down into the area of Kursk, we did get to see that explosions are occurring in Kursk again, as it does sound like Ukrainian drones are targeting and hitting the city for the second night in a row.
Охуеть.
Охуеть.
Охереть.
Oh.
Охуеть, глянь.
Вылетает, да? Где-то стоит.
Во.
And that's the end of that clip, but still, more attacks continue. Moving on from that and down near the border of Kursk, we also got to see some partisans using FPV drones to hit the Russians. Oh, and we got that copyright coming in. Clutch. There goes the drone. Oh, yeah. There's something like that, but we can see the drones targeting the Russian substations, actually. Oh, and what's that? Highlighted in the center of the screen. What could that be? And Darkshine the kid said, "Have you guys never seen a mafia movie?" LOL. Yes, we have, but there are some people who are watching this channel who were formerly affiliated with that, and so we take it easy. Like we take it easy here.
You know, shockingly enough, like the car bomb things were really not that widely used in the mafia. The movies make it look like they happened all the time, but according to what I've seen from interviews of actual mobsters, that actually only happened kind of rarely. Actually, like you'd see them in the newspaper occasionally, but not all the time.
Usually, the way the mafia would end up taking people out is either beating them to death, which is a fairly cheap and easy thing to do, or shooting them. That was like the more common way people went. Because you have to remember, the mafia is a business, so they're trying to find the most economical way of doing something, and blowing up a whole car and also getting a lot of press attention on the mafia isn't a good thing for them, because it only brings down more attention from the federal government. So usually they wanted to take care of people in a more quiet way, so that way it wasn't, heavily publicized, talked about, and had the FBI on their ass because they blew up someone else with a car bomb like next week. But moving on from that and into our next bit of news inside of the area of our location unknowns, we did get to see a Ukrainian BMP in training. This is actually a BMP-1K that has been heavily outfitted with slat armor on the sides. And I gotta say, it looks pretty Mad Max, like with all the slat armor, but still really nice to see them in training and hopefully getting some sea legs for the tank. Moving on from that, we also got to see the SBU hitting some Russian military targets right here.
Oof. Hit him right in the cope cage, bliat.
Man, hitting them hard.
This is SSU CCO genius.
Man, I'm telling you, man, it really is. Let's see, Lefty Rosenthal. Yeah, he was car bombed. Yeah, that's true. You know, that's really weird, though, car bombing someone in Las Vegas, because at the time, I think when that guy was car bombed, Las Vegas has really heavy connections with the mafia, because most of the casinos were actually funded or somewhat operated by the mafia. So it's kind of like shitting in your at your front lobby of your house, like on the carpet. It's going to bring a lot of attention, and not only that, it's in your home turf where you're running things, But anyways, moving on from that and into our next bit of news, we actually got to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours as well, and good googly moly, that thing
Oh,
is
we got
juicy.
3 Bobcats. I'm telling you what, look at that. 3 Bobcats. Oh, my God.
Oh my goodness. And also, Miss Disa put in a correction. It's not 573,520. It's actually 572,300. And so thank you for sharing that, Miss Disa. But 1,210 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, an incredibly high number, joined with 24 APCs, 86 supply trucks, 11 main battle tanks, 45 artillery pieces, 53 drones, 1 cruise missile, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 3 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, today was an impressively good day for the Ukrainian ground forces, and it once again looks like they are really giving the Russians a bit of their mind, a piece of their mind of a sort. But moving on from that, and into our next bit of news within the area of northern Vovchansk, we also got to see that apparently Orban has said something very interesting. He has said that Ukraine won't get NATO membership, but will pretty much become a NATO buffer state in between Russia and the rest of NATO. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts in the statement by Orban. Some people are saying that he's sadly right. Others are saying that Ukraine is already a de facto member. And others are saying that he's wrong and Ukraine will become a part of NATO. And Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so this is your favorite guy. This is Viktor Orban from Hungary, and he's got some statements he's making about Ukraine's future NATO membership. And it looks like 32% of the people in the audience said, sadly, Orban is right, and there will be no NATO membership for Ukraine, while 28% said he's wrong, and Ukraine will be NATO soon. And 26% said Ukraine is already a de facto NATO member right now. And I think the way that this is going to be played like this: Ukraine is already being treated like a de facto NATO country, now minus the Article 5 exception. We're not enforcing that because obviously they're at war already, and also there are restrictions on Ukraine becoming a NATO member while they're in an active conflict. So we'll keep sending aid to the country and doing everything we can on that front, but we will not be stepping in to fight on their behalf because they're not a NATO member, obviously, at the moment. So I think it's going to be pretty much de facto, but I really don't know whether or not Ukraine's going to actually get NATO membership after the war is over. That all depends on how it looks, how Russia, what kind of state they're in and condition they're in. So it's really too early to tell. But it sounds like the NATO membership hopes have kind of gotten tamped down just a little bit from the sounds of it. So I don't agree with Orban completely here, but we'll have to wait and see. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, in my opinion, if it ever does happen, it will be after the war. I don't think they're a de facto member currently. I know that Zelenskyy has been showing up to a lot of NATO summits, but to be honest, that doesn't really mean anything. You can show up to you can show up to the Lumberjacks conference. That doesn't mean you're a lumberjack now or a de facto lumberjack. It just means you showed up to the conference. And so, in my opinion, I'd have to say it probably will happen, but it will most likely be after the war. Matthew is right. The idea of Ukraine getting in NATO has been tampered down a good bit, but I still think there is a good possibility that they will get in NATO post-war. But moving on from that and into the rest of our news in Vovchansk, we did get to see the border guards hitting a Russian buggy today in Vovchansk. All right, I don't know what the hell. Man, dude, when you ask a pirate, are you on that fine Peruvian blow, you hear... he be on
That's
the good stuff
music right there.
He be on that nice snowy marching powder here, or something like that. But we see them hit the cart and it sets on fire immediately. Also, I wonder who listens to that kind of music, man. Like people hitting like pots and pans and then going yar or something like that. It's like, hey, what is this, a pirate ship or something? What does it sound like now?
People that like to dress up as pirates.
I don't think that's a pirate.
Oh. Man, that's not my style of music, I can tell you that.
Man, yikes, that was rough. But moving on from that into our next one, we also get to see an abandoned T-80 in the area also being destroyed as well. Check this out. Oh, right in the hatch. Yar. I gotta tell you, man, they're picking like rougher and rougher music these days for these clips. Like it used to be like, that oh man, yeah. Now it's like just like screaming in the mic. Oh, a
Just a
smoke
tip to
ring.
the Ukrainians, you'd get so much more views if you just include like the normal audio or there's no audio at all. Like it would be so much better.
It would be. And it would make it a lot easier for us to talk about the videos and actually play audio. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we got to see a working T-64 AV, not a BV, an AV of the Ukrainian 36 Marines, which is operating in the area. And really neat to see. Just really, that's it. But moving on from that and into the northern area around Avdiivka, we got to see the 10th Brigade hitting a Russian ammo depot. Alright, and now we got a whole new kind of music, and they're running the drone right into the building. And here's the actual perspective of what that looked like from the Russian perspective. And we're going to have to mute that. I'm so sorry, everyone. I just wish we could play audio on these clips, but sometimes we just can't. But that's the end of the clip, and really neat to see. Moving on from that, and a little bit further down the line, the Naholny. We got to see the Ukrainians hitting even more Russians with those drones. There's some Russians in the car, and they are taking that turn sharp. Oh, they flipped!
Oh.
Dude, did you see that in a hood near
All
you?
this game stuff. All this game stuff popping up on the screen. Talking about buy it for $27,000, cash $30,000. What the hell is this?
I don't know, man, but in a hood near you. And we see the Russians trying to figure out what to do with the car. It looks like they're trying to grab stuff out of it, and then they wandered away. And now the Ukrainian drone's going to take it on out. Taking out the laundry at this point, and oh, that thing's on fire.
What dummies, man. They've got so many Tony's driving this one again, man. How'd it get flipped like that? I mean, come on.
Man, I'm telling you, man, they flipped that thing hard, too, man. It was like no soft flip. That thing was going pretty fast when it flipped. We also got to see a BMP exploding down near the Severonsky Forest. Y'all want to see this? I know y'all do. Here's the clip. Oh, look at that. It's firing, it's shooting, the music is garbage, and we can see it keeping on going down the road. It's about to hit a mine here in a second, right up in front of it. It's like 50 yards down the road. Right there. Boom! Oh, man, it disassembled like a Lego piece. Like, it was terrible. Crew is gone. Hopes are dashed. Boulder dash. It's terrible. Huge shout out to Pigeon Forge.
Pigeon Forge, baby. Pigeon Forge.
Real ones, man. Real ones working Pigeon Forge. Also, by the way, huge shout out to all the folks up there in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. I don't know what's happened in the last few years since we've been there, but the place looks different. Like I don't know if it's good, if it's bad. I just know I'm not going back. That's all. I'm sorry. Like that's all I know. Like that's all I can say. What more can I say? Also, Matthew, I've got to know. Does Gatlinburg even on this look like a tourist trap now? Oh man, it does. Man, they updated. It
kind of does.
Man, I remember back in the day, Gatlinburg was cool. Like we went there when we were kids, like really, really young, and it was like a country town. It had a really, really like country Appalachian vibe to it. It was pretty cool. Like it was really like an artisan place more so. But now it's kind of like that tourist trap kind of, cheap stuff like SpongeBob plushies. It's like this isn't necessarily like a real like Appalachian town anymore. More so of a tourist trap. Hate to see it happen, but happens to almost every town at some point. Anyways, moving on from that. Wait a minute, Matthew. Is this that timeshare? No, that's not that timeshare place. Where the hell's that timeshare that went bankrupt? Like, do you know where that is?
I think it was like the big something lodge or something, the big timber lodge or something like that. It was out in the woods somewhere.
Yeah, it was out in the woods. They had some giant giant pavilion thing, and then they went bankrupt. We ended up getting scammed into going on a tour of that thing. And we were like, man, this sucks. And it did. It really did. But anyways, moving on from that, we don't have any time for Gatlinburg. We only have time for Ukraine. And so we got to get back to the Ukraine war news. And moving on into the area around Soledar, we did get to see more Ukrainian drones dropping bombs on Russian forces. This one was filmed by the 30th Brigade. And Jack Ray said back in the day, it was a tourist trap then. Youngins. It probably was, but it seemed like a more acceptable tourist trap to me back then than what it turned into. Well, oh! That Russian got it. He's looking up like, you bastard! Like, he's just like, what the hell?
Okay.
And so skipping forward See him getting up and kind of walking around. Looks like he may have sprained an ankle.
He's walking it off.
And now he's just watching as the drone keeps track of where he's going. And he's now moving through the trench. And there goes the next bomb, landing right in the dugout. We can see him hanging out in there. He's just kind of chilling. And he's still chilling.
It's a terrible place to chill. It looks very hot.
Yeah, it looks a little hot down there. Also, they say that heat wave is going through Ukraine. Also, someone brought this up in the chat. Someone said that also Asheville, North Carolina has turned really into like a massive tourist trap as well. Yes, I would agree with that completely, because the last time we went through there, just a quick little rabbit hole, the last time we went through the area of Asheville and Pigeon Forge in Gatlinburg was when we went on a trip to Biltmore, because my mom wanted to see it. She thought it was so cool. I thought it was pretty cool too, because, you know, like, who doesn't think that a giant mansion like Biltmore isn't cool? Like that just where the hell is it? There we go. Here it is. Like, who wouldn't think that a building like this isn't cool? I mean, it's like, I think it is the biggest mansion in America, or at least on the side of North America. And so we went to it, and then it was really underwhelming on the inside because we had gone to Blenheim before. And so we went to this thing and we're like, the layout doesn't even make any sense, and it's really not that impressive. And so then after that, we drove from Asheville, which is freaking massive. It like literally surrounds the Biltmore estate. So we drove from Asheville out and through the Appalachian Mountains, and then to Gatlinburg, and then to Pigeon Forge, and then around the other side, and then finally through Chattanooga and everything back to Birmingham. But it was really tourist trappy in Asheville. To be honest, it kind of came off weird. Like, the town itself was really weird. Like, it was like you would have to be tripping on LSD or acid to really appreciate like the wall art that was on a lot of the buildings, because it was just a little bit too freaky for me. I couldn't appreciate it. I was like,
that indoor pool that they had in there was creepy as hell. Like down there in the basement of that thing, like it was just so creepy.
Man, let me see. I wonder if they have a picture of that here. Also, some people are going like, what do you mean this isn't impressive? Look, if you went to Blenheim in the United Kingdom, this looks like nothing. Like, it really does. And it's like, this isn't really that impressive for like a massive... Oh, dude, here's that bowling alley. Dude, they actually filmed the There Will Be Blood bowling alley scene where that guy said, I drank your milkshake, and then he beat him to death with like a bowling ball or something. They filmed it, I think, in this bowling alley. Like, no joke.
I believe it has the look for it, for certain.
Man, honestly, man, this place kind of gives me the creeps. Like, at least on the inside a little bit. Jeepers! I would have gotten away with it too. It wasn't for you damn kids. But anyways, dude, they don't have any pictures of the pool. Like it's the creepiest part of the building. Let me go pull it up.
Biltmore pool.
Yeah, we're gonna go pull that up on the second screen. Yeah, pull that up, Jamie. Biltmore pool. Oh, here it is. That little creepy bastard of a pool. Here it is. Yeah, you will be terrified when you see it. Boom.
Oh yeah, man, that is so creepy. I don't even know what about it like it makes me so creeped out. But could you imagine like that being full of water? It looks like somewhere you like get drowned in or something. Oh gosh, that's terrible.
Oh my goodness, dude! I like how they have the little noose-like ropes hanging off of the side here. It looks like a nice little execution is going to be happening down here. Oh, I hate this pool. Like, I cannot put into words how much this pool creeps me out. Like, and how it's so confined. You know, like, if this thing was actually filled with water, the water would go up to about where that little wooden platform is right there, okay? So there's not really a lot of room above you. Like, it's not really like a nice, spacious looking pool area. It's like a cellar that has water in it, and none of that sounds interesting or nice. It's creepy as shit. Like, no other better way to say that. It's creepy, and I don't like it. And they don't have any other pictures of this pool. These people are lying. There is no pool like that at Biltmore. This is like a Photoshop picture.
No, I've never seen that.
Well, hell, it's not even on Google Maps. Like, here's Biltmore Estate. What they did is that they photoshopped the giant green area into a swimming pool.
That might have been nicer for real, though. They might want to go back and renovate that.
Yeah, they might want to improve the place a little, like that. You know, I think that would be better, to be honest. But anyways, long story short, Biltmore pool, stuff of nightmares. I would never swim in this pool ever. But moving on from that, it is time for us to get back into the area around Chasiv Yar, where we got to see a kamikaze drone hitting some Russian logistics vehicles. Okay. Well, anyways, there goes the drone. And we can see the Russians running off. And I heard that they sent a last transmission to the Russian headquarters a couple of miles away, and it was bang, 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 or something like that as they ran away. But we can now see the little vehicle down there burning up. Also, Thomas Watkins, you were correct. The pool on the Queen Mary is also nightmare fuel as well. It's a very scary swimming pool. Leonardo Willie said probably badass in the 30s. Maybe, but me personally, outdoor pools beat indoor pools every single time, in my opinion. They always look better. They come off better. They're just nicer to be at least
And
to
also
me.
the smell of those indoor pools is
Ooh,
terrible. It's
yeah.
like you walk in there and it's just instant, like, overwhelm you with like chlorine and chemicals and stuff. It's like, I'd much rather be outside myself.
Man, you know what's crazy about the Vanderbilt family? Y'all may not know this, but well, I'm sure many people do. This is like a commonly known fact. But Anderson Cooper from CNN is actually one of the Vanderbilts. He's actually, I believe he was one of the heirs to the Vanderbilt fortune or something like that. But then his mom pretty much gave away like her whole part of it in a will. And so when she died, he got none of it. So kind of sad for him.
Wow.
But still, he is actually a part of the Vanderbilt family in a sense.
That explains why he's on CNN.
Yeah, it actually does, doesn't it? And it's like Tucker Carlson, whose dad was in the CIA and then he got into media. It's kind of like you have to have connections to get into big mainstream media positions. You know what I mean? But maybe it's just coincidence. I don't know.
No, I was saying like that explains why he's on CNN because he didn't get the fortune. Like he's sitting at home not working if he had the fortune.
Well, usually the people who get onto those kind of media positions, either they were influential people or they had good connections. And him being a part of the Vanderbilt family, because his mom wasn't dead when he got on CNN. She was still alive. He died while he was working at CNN. But the whole reason he got the job at CNN is because he was a Vanderbilt and his family had connections. So with that, I hope that does address that well. I'll give a little bit of a backstory to that whole legacy. But moving on from that and down into Kurtimivka, we also got to see the 93rd also striking Russian logistics as well. And we can see the drone here flying down the road, eyeballing its incoming target. And we can see them.
Oh, caught them with their pants down at night.
Oh yeah, getting slammed. I mean, they're just getting obliterated. All the trucks are pulled on the side of the road. Also, I saw Defender Marcia say Anderson has his journalism chops. His family affiliation means nothing. Yeah, maybe so. I mean, it's a matter of opinion for everyone whether they like a journalist or not. Me personally, I won't weigh in a comment on Anderson Cooper. There's no reason to. But I will say his family connection probably made it a lot easier for him to get in front of an executive at CNN to be recognized for his journalism chops to then become a journalist. Because that's usually how it goes. Like, for example, with Tucker Carlson. He's a fairly good example as well. Because his dad was a little bit on up there in the CIA. And when you're on up there in those kinds of government positions, you usually end up rubbing elbows. And then you can kind of get your kids set in kind of a position or a job. It's usually how it works. That's why, you have like different families like the Kennedys. The Kennedys are still politically prominent, and that's because their family always has connections, and so they're able to leverage those. Also, apparently we have the Devil's Team officers out here. I don't know what they're up to, but apparently something devilish.
I don't know why some of these units want to like start adopting like devil imagery. I'm like, isn't that kind of playing into Russian propaganda a little bit?
Well, man, like both sides are kind of a little whack with that. Like the Russians, like we're not Nazis, and then they'll use Nazi symbology on some of their units. It's like that's pretty Nazi looking to me.
I'm not gonna lie, their watermark kind of like makes it hard to watch the video. It's like you're hard to see through it, really.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm almost looking at the watermark more than the actual video, but they're moving through the city. They are firing from building to building, and a watermark, explosion, maybe watermark, big watermark, just massive watermark in the middle of the video. And we can see a huge watermark. They're walking up a stairwell. Bulbous watermark. I mean, this thing covers the whole screen. Darkness watermark. Firing. More shooting. Automatic fire. Watermark. Big watermark. Clearing a room. Firing through the doors. Firing. More shooting. More shooting. Even more shooting. More firing, more shooting, big watermark. Honestly, man, the watermark is making it so hard to even commentate because the stupid nods on that watermark keep on catching my attention. I keep on looking at them. And so, what damn watermark? I don't know what they're doing. Like, fill in the blanks. It's y'all's video. It's y'all's combat video. What are they doing? They're doing something.
The devil unit needs to work on like the watermark and the stuff like that.
Oh, dude, you know what they need, Matthew, is someone named like Devin, you know, so that way they can sit there and say, "And this is Devin, your only form of hellish entertainment," or something like that. And they'd have Devin go. If y'all know what I'm talking about, y'all know. If y'all don't, y'all don't. Yeah,
Video needs an exorcism.
So like that, but anyways. You see them continuing to move around. This guy has the scavenger backpack from Escape from Tarkov. That thing was huge. And we can see them continue. Actually, he had the big blueberry bag. That would be more appropriate. But we can see them continue to move around, shooting. We see them running around a little bit more, running around. Big watermark, massive watermark. Video finally ends. Moving on from that and out of the area, it's time for us to move on to Otra Terranate, where we got to see a Bradley lighten up a little BMP. Doom, doom, doom. The Bradley's down there. The BMP's up there. BMP is getting roasted. Oh my goodness, they are tearing into it.
And the Bradley's the one shooting at the thing?
Oh, yeah, the Bradley's the one tearing it apart.
Man, those Ukrainians have used those Bradleys very effectively. Like, that thing has a good gun.
Yeah, I mean, that thing is crazy good. I mean, well, the Bradley's an amazing infantry fighting vehicle. I just got to say, one of the best out there by far. Better than the BMP-3. I would argue even better than the Warrior in the UK, and better than the Puma. Hell, I'd say it's the best, really. I would. But moving on from that, we got to see the 80th also conducting some drone operations against the Russians as well. I want the Polish boys' desk as well. And we can see the little drone flying in. And hitting this vehicle laden with supplies. It's now on fire and burning. And dang, that thing burned out. Damn!
Oh.
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 Yikes. Oh.
Oh.
Cut away.
Cut away. What for? What for? There's nothing here. What are we cutting away for? But anyways,
I don't think you were seeing what I was seeing.
I wasn't. But anyways, moving on from that and down to Marinka, we also got to see a burning BMP too. This is from the 81st Brigade. We can tell because they had the fire in the flames as their intro.
What the hell? What's that? He's on the loudspeaker doing this piece of music art right here.
Americans, your country has abandoned you. Something like that.
Also, I'm very pleased, my OCD is very pleased that Griffin up there in the top right corner has an evenly soaked sword of blood. Did you see that? Like, evenly soaked. Like, not a part of it is too dark than the other. It's perfectly soaked.
Man, they got a pool of blood and they just dip that thing in. like it has to be evenly coated. But anyways, very nice to see them get that T-64. Very rare, actually. And we got the Koreans. The North Koreans, they're back. And so with that, we're now moving on from that little bit of news. And now we're moving on to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on this very day of the war, day 885. The video has absolutely no explanation. It's just raw video.
Шановні пані та
And it's an actual speech. It's a speech, a real speech, long-lasting speech. And
Could I please have a real speech? I would like a long-lasting speech. Could we please have the speech in front of the large crowd? Hello, my fellow Ukrainians. I wish you good health.
and it's time.
Найперше, я вітаю всіх з Днем медичного працівника України, всіх наших лікарів,
One second, folks. There you
медичних
go.
сестер і братів, усіх, хто присвятив себе благородній, дуже благородній місії – допомагати, лікувати, рятувати українців, рятувати наших воїнів, рятувати наших людей. Наші медики – люди з великої літери, наші медики з великим серцем, які роблять велику справу. Всі роки незалежності, у часи різних викликів та випробувань, у часи протидії COVID-19, звичайно, тепер під час повномасштабного вторгнення. Сьогодні від самого ранку маю честь бачитися саме з такими людьми, відзначати їх державними нагородами. Ми були в Інституті травматології, який від сьогодні має статус національного. Також були у нашому легендарному Ахмаддіті, який ми обов'язково відбудуємо. І зараз ми тут з вами на цьому знаковому конгресі, який присвячено дуже важливій знаковій темі. Зазвичай в публічному просторі або розмовах між собою тема обороноздатності країни перш за все асоціюється зі зброєю, технікою, оснащенням. І все це дійсно надважливо. Але разом з тим є річ в контексті війни, відіграє не меншу роль, яка так само є зброєю, але іншого характеру. Це фізичне і ментальне здоров'я наших воїнів. Саме тому цей захід є дуже важливим, саме тому військова медицина має завжди бути у фокусі уваги держави. Адже це про людей, адже це для людей. Наших воїнів, їхніх рідних, близьких, бойових медиків, усіх, хто дотичний до цієї сфери, наших волонтерів, наших партнерів. Словом, всіх, хто розуміє, що кожен захисник, кожна захисниця, їхнє життя і здоров'я – це найвищий пріоритет для України. 24 лютого 2022 року перед державою постали масштабні загрози, часто несиметричні, наявним тоді ресурсам і досвіду. Військова медицина не була виключенням, але завдяки волі і злагодженій роботі вдалося вистояти і в подальшому подолати чимало викликів. Я вітаю всі реальні кроки, що вже зроблені. Водночас я хотів би наголосити, завдань на цьому шляху ще багато. Вони є пріоритетом. Побудова медичної системи, що відповідає викликам сьогодення, створення єдиного медичного простору, де кожен фахівець знає і виконує свою роль, є пріоритетом. Мова, зокрема, про ефективне використання ресурсів, постачання аптечок і турнікетів, відповідної якості, постачання мобільних госпіталів, бути уважнішими до поранених, бути уважнішими до тих, хто повернувся з російського пекла. Мова про механізми реінтеграції звільнених з полону бійців, створення центру реінтеграції та забезпечення відновлення військовослужбовців. Все, що може бути оцифровано, має бути оцифровано. Міноборони разом з Генеральним штабом до кінця року повинні розгорнути медичну інформаційну систему у військових частинах, щоб маршрут пораненого був прозорим, був зрозумілим. Це те, чого очікує кожен військовий медик і кожен військовослужбовець. Має бути впроваджена ефективна система реабілітації, яка включає ментальне відновлення військових разом з їхніми родинами. Окремо я хочу відзначити наших військових хірургів та проведення ними абсолютно унікальних операцій, деякі з яких не мають аналогів в цьому світі. Наші лікарі сьогодні відновлюють втрачені кінцівки, роблять операції, навіть коли уражене серце, коли, здавалося б, це вже неможливо, повертають воїна до життя. Клас і самовідданість наших медиків принесли, на мій погляд, найголовніший успіх військової медицини в часи цієї війни. Попри усі виклики і складнощі, витримано високий рівень виживання поранених і значний відсоток повернення в стрій. І це точно заслуговує оплесків нашим хірургам. Дуже дякуємо вам. Шановні присутні, пані та панове, перед системою військової медицини стоїть ще чимало викликів, які належить подолати. Як голова держави, я обіцяю вам всебічну підтримку на цьому напрямку. Мною підписано указ положення про проходження військової служби, який регулює проходження служби особами з медичною освітою і присвоєнням первичного офіцерського звання лікарям, що не проходили військову кафедру. Крім цього, я надав доручення уряду в повній мірі забезпечити фінансування створення сучасного реабілітаційного госпіталю з модулем реінтеграції військових, звільнених з полону, та стабілізаційних пунктів для безперебійного надання медичної допомоги в зоні ведення бойових дій. Захист держави – це, безумовно, двосторонній рух, і ті, хто захищає державу, мають знати, мають відчувати, що держава захищає їх. І в цьому різниця між нами і ворогом. Росія нехтує своїми людьми, не бореться за їхнє виживання. Натомість Україна має робити все для захисту життя, передусім життя і здоров'я своїх воїнів. Наше військо довело свою сучасність, силу, які спроможні встановити бажаний мир в Україні. І коли ми справедливо говоримо про необхідність зброї, маємо не забувати, що підтримка і захист наших воїнів – це також зброя. Кожен командир має пам'ятати: люди – невитратний матеріал. Їхні сили, їхні знання, їхні вміння – важлива цінність для нашої держави. Сьогодні, відзначаючи державними нагородами багатьох медиків, зокрема військових, я вкотре можу сказати, наша незалежність міцно тримається на наших людях. І з цим розумінням ми повинні створити відповідну систему реабілітації з найвищим рівнем підготовки необхідних кадрів і центрами відновлення. Це наше завдання, це наша мета, це наш шлях. Я дякую вам за запрошення, дякую за увагу, бажаю плідних дискусій, що важливо, ефективних рішень. Вітаю всіх причетних з Днем медичного працівника України. Слава Україні!
Heroam Slava Butt.
Heroam Slava.
Brutus?
Bro,
Brutus, is that you? Bluto?
Don't cut back to him again, man.
Bro,
I can't take it. I was trying to get myself under control before I started talking.
Wait, why does he look like the Russian ambassador from Doctor Strangelove? Let me go get him. Like,
I've never seen such an unfazed look on anybody's face while someone's giving a speech like that. It's like I'm like, I don't know if he meant it or not, but he looked like he didn't give a damn about what Zelenskyy was saying.
hold on, dude. I got it, man. Dude, he's the Russian ambassador from Doctor Strangelove. Right there. It's him.
Oh.
It's him. He's back. Like, I don't know how, but he's back.
Why'd they keep cutting to him over and over like that? Like, they cut to him like 3 times during that whole speech, and it's like, dude, he's like looking very uninterested. It's like, don't show him over and over.
Dude, like Zelensky's giving the speech. People in the room are like listening. They're there, and then like this. Look,
який регулює проходження служби
Zelensky's
особами
talking.
з медичною освітою.
Meanwhile, in this guy's mind, I would like to kill a bitch right now just to get them, you know, like maybe hurt them a little, you know. I don't
Bro,
know.
that man.
Uh,
He's probably a really good fella. Like, if you really know know the guy about that look on his face though while he was talking is just something else.
I beat him like it owes me money. So I think it goes back to Zelensky's speech or something like that. Like, why does the guy look like that? Like the guy looks so angry. Like he didn't just look this interested. He looks so angry. Like why did he look like that? I was really. I had to go away to get some saltine crackers for a minute. I came back and I was like, wow, what's going on here? Like, I was like, what is this? But anyways, with that, that is the end of the speech. And it is time for us to move on into the second segment of the stream. And if many of y'all are here and brand new, Mr. Vic, one of them, thank you so much for just finding the channel and subscribing, Mr. Vic. That's incredibly kind of you to say. Have such kind words for us this early on. You just found us, too. But beyond that, if you're one of the new viewers like Mr. Vic, I'm sure that many of y'all don't know what's coming next, because I just told y'all the news is over. What else could there be? Well, there is a question segment where we get to address all of the super chats that have come in tonight, as many live chats as we can, and it is an incredibly interesting segment because really anything goes. We could talk about anything and everything in the segment, and while it may not be on the Ukraine war, usually there's some really interesting and really cool stuff that we get to talk about during the question segment. And so, without further ado, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so jumping into our final question segment of the night, we have one more poll to address, and this one says, Ukrainian officials say that they've received a quote-unquote clear signal that China is working to end the war in Ukraine, and what are your thoughts? 54% said Ukraine should leave China alone right now, while 19% were unsure, another 19% said it really doesn't matter, and 7% said China can bring real peace in Ukraine. And I'm with the 54%. I'm not going to mince words here. Ukraine should leave China alone right now before things go really badly for them with the West. They're playing with fire with this. And just to read off a list real quick of what China is currently doing to support Russia, and this is the reality of the situation, not sugarcoating it whatsoever. Here's our post that we put on Twitter. It says, how China helps Russia fight Ukraine. Number one, China provides Russia real-time Milsat imagery. China also sends dual-use goods, military goods to Russia, as well as China providing Russian economic support. They also refuse to attend the Ukraine Peace Summit. China also sends their warships to Russian ports, and also they have helped set up Russians' weapons production inside of their country to fight Ukraine. So, to say that Ukraine received a clear signal that China is working to end the war, that is utter bogus. I'm not sure why they're saying that, because it's obviously not reality, and it looks like game playing to me. So they should really leave China alone before it gets out of hand. But Enforcer, what say you?
They need to leave China alone. Didn't I tell y'all this was going to happen? Didn't I tell y'all? I told y'all that the West has put in hundreds of billions of dollars into this war. And now Ukraine is going to try and get China to broker a peace. China should not be the one brokering a peace. If anyone, it should be America. And now we are seeing that they are actually saying China is trying to work towards peace. This is exactly what I said was going to happen. Like, I said this 2 months ago, 3 months ago tops. I've been saying this. I haven't been saying it as much as I should have on air because a lot of people gave me pushback on this. But this is exactly what I said was probably going to start happening. And it's happening. The West should come in and stop this immediately. This is a bad thing. It's going against everything that we've done, everything that we've supported in Ukraine. It's all about to go down the drain, especially if China brokers the peace, because then Ukraine is going to naturally gravitate towards them as the strong one, and all the money that we put into Ukraine, all of the time and effort that we have given them, it will all have been for waste, because it won't even go to the Western sphere. It'll end up going to the Chinese. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. I have to say this, though. I must say this. I said this 2.5 months ago at a minimum on stream. I said this is where it was going to go, and people did not want to believe me. Like, people wanted to buck it because the people said, no, there's no way that Ukraine would ever do that. Zelenskyy is too smart for that, and it's happening. I mean, I told y'all that China, like, some people said Zelenskyy is too smart. I said, y'all, you're right, Zelenskyy is smart, but China's going to pull the wool over their eyes and make everything seem like it's a great idea, and that's exactly what they did. When Kubala went over there, Wang Yi pulled that wool right over their eyes, and now they're doing exactly everything I said they were going to do. And all I can say is that we knew it was going to happen. That was clear from day one. So I hope that does address that well. China is a plague upon the world. We should make it very clear to Ukraine if they want to go and side with the disease. We're going. Well, I don't want to get that strongly worded that quickly, but I would tell them that if they want to be friendly with the Chinese, they're not going to be friendly with us. I'll put it that way, because You know what? No, I'll be honest with y'all. If the Ukrainians want to be friends with the Chinese, we should cut them off. That's what my honest answer would be. I'm pro-Ukraine, but I'm pro-Western primarily. If the Ukrainians want to take hundreds of billions of dollars from the West, like we've given them, and then go and jump onto a Chinese sphere of influence, we should cut them off right now. That's what my threat would be. I would say y'all need to stop having any relations with the Chinese. You need to politely decline anything that they're doing for y'all in the future. Otherwise, you're going to be risking losing all of the Western support that we've been giving you so far. That would be my ultimatum. Because I would rather do that and pull the Band-Aid off and it hurts, instead of sit there and continue to support them so that way they can still hop to China at the end of the war, because it looks like the Chinese are really working very hard to make that a reality at this point, and Ukraine is honestly not really looking that resistant to it. In fact, they look open to it. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. I know that's a very, very strong statement to make, and I know that many people are going to be like, well, what about the Ukrainian people? Sadly, the Ukrainian people can't do the opposite of what the government's doing. And if the government decides to hop into a Chinese sphere after the West bankrolled the entire war for 2.5 years, that's what Ukraine's going to end up doing. And I would say this, pro-Ukrainian all the way, have a bunch of sympathy for the Ukrainian people. I really do. And also I have a lot of concerns about Ukraine for strategic interests primarily. But if those strategic interests can no longer be secured because the Ukrainian government decides that the Chinese are a better friend than us, the people who've actually been helping them out the entire time in the war, tooth and nail, giving them loads of money and support that the West could have simply opted to not give them, then we should clearly threaten that we will stop all support if they want to go with the Chinese, and let the Chinese support them instead and see how far they get with that. Because I'll tell you this, the Chinese are all friends and buddies and everything until it actually comes to materially supporting Ukraine, and then you'll see that no support would flow. The West are good people. All of our viewers right now are Western. Every single one of y'all is. And I would take that as a massive spit in the face to all of y'all who have supported Ukraine through and through, because they were a Western aligned country and had Western interests at their core value, and then for them to spit in everyone's face and go hop to the Chinese at the end of this whole thing, that would have been completely not worth anything. So that would be my opinion. I know it's a very strong one, and it's almost a complete 180 if the Ukrainians hop to the Chinese from what we're currently at right now. But at that point, what are we supporting them for? You know, like that's the kind of thing I'm trying to get across to everyone, is what were we supporting them for the entire time? Like, you know, if they're just going to hop to the Chinese. I mean, the Chinese, for one, aren't a great country. I mean, the Chinese are literally the Russians to Taiwan that Russia is to Ukraine. Why in the world would Ukraine side with a country like that? I mean, America isn't trying to push any illegitimate claims onto some territory in the world. We're not saying that Saskatoon or Saskatchewan is a part of the United States. We're not trying to illegally annex any territory. We don't go out of our way to put people in camps like the Chinese do just because their ideology doesn't align with the majority of the Han Chinese in their country. We don't sit there and oppress people in our country and actually execute people in the tens of thousands every year. We don't do any of that stuff. We do none of it. And we sit there and we said to Ukraine at the beginning of the war, you're illegally being invaded, and just on that premise alone, we're going to support y'all. And then it evolved into being a Western interest scenario from that point forward. And so for the Ukrainians to go, you know, the West, if it wasn't for the West, and Zelenskyy has said this, if it wasn't for America and if it wasn't for European support, Ukraine wouldn't survive. And even with that in mind, we're pretty much going to throw that all out the window and go hop into the Chinese sphere at the end of the war on the West dollar. That is crazy to me. Like if that's actually what they're moving towards, and it kind of sounds a little bit like it to me, I'm not a big fan of that. Pro-Ukraine all the way, pro-Western all the way, but that is an anti-Western, anti-American decision to make, and I'm not a big fan of that at all, if that's what they're actually starting to seriously consider. And so, with that, and also I see some people saying, I'm pretty sure Zelenskyy is aware of China's predatory nature. Well, he's not showing it right now if he is. He's just openly, like, I don't know, Matthew, maybe I'm reading it a little bit differently, but to me it seems as though they are completely open to anything and everything the Chinese are proposing right now, and they are showing absolutely no apprehension that would lead me to believe that they understand what they're dealing with the Chinese.
I'm not sure really what they're doing, to be honest, at this point. I'm not sure if they're just desperate or what. And the reality of it is they really have no reason to be desperate because the U.S. keeps sending more and more equipment to Ukraine, and we're not backing off of that whatsoever. So, if Ukraine needs more help or something like that, they could simply come to the U.S. and say, hey, look, we want a new place to sell our grain or something like that. And we could try to set that up for them, or at least try to guide them in the right direction. I'm just not sure why they feel like they want to go buddy up with the Chinese, because the Chinese are going to be much worse to deal with than dealing with the West for Ukraine's benefit. So, and also, like you said, it would be stabbing the West in the back to some extent because we provided a ton of U.S. tax dollars to help them. So hopefully it is just maybe a diplomatic thing and not really a serious exercise in diplomacy toward the Chinese, or otherwise it could, end up very badly for Western relations with that country.
I mean, maybe so. I mean, that may be the case. Also, I saw Paddington say this, and I gotta say something about this. Paddington said Zelenskyy and the Ukrainians aren't going to be supporting China's endeavors. They're not going to help them invade Taiwan. They're not going to help them repress the Uyghurs. Being friendly isn't complicit. Well, I'll tell you, I'd have to disagree with that on a historical precedent. Now, you're right. I can see that side of an argument. But let me throw out an alternative. In World War II, when Germany was occupied, when Germany occupied France, there was a government there that they set up called the Vichy government, which was made up of a whole bunch of French politicians from France who ran the country. And some of them didn't end up doing anything at all. They hardly did anything. But when Germany got pushed back out of France, guess what every single one of those French guys got called that were in the Vichy government? They got called collaborators. That's what they got called. You know what the Swiss got called? The Swiss shot down German bombers and American bombers alike at different times in the war. They were about as neutral as they could possibly get within the realm of reality. And you know what they got called? Complicit to the Nazis. And then you know what the Nazis called them? Complicit to the Allies. Sometimes, and collaborating with them, more so, not just complicit, but collaborating with the Nazis, collaborating with the Allies. At different points of the war, both sides accused them of doing those things. In a world like this, and in a world that Ukraine is living in, where they're saying we want to be a part of NATO and we want to be Western so bad, and then they start lining up with the Chinese are the complete opposite. We can't trust them. They can't trust them. No one should trust them. It's a bad move all around. And it looks like, oh no! Oh no!
What happened?
Oh, no.
Why'd I get kicked off?
I don't know. The Discord call's doing that connect and reconnect thing, I think. I'm going to pop this back up. If that happens again, I'm going to have to quickly throw us off screen and restart. But we can't trust them. The Ukrainians can't trust them. No one can trust them. The Chinese Communist Party is a disease on this world that we should try and contain and isolate as best as we can. And the Ukrainians, which I don't know why, because a lot of people would say, oh, the Chinese are trying to do this with Ukraine. No. The entire time, Ukraine has been trying to get to China. China has not been trying to get to Ukraine. I don't know why. Because at the beginning of the war, Xi Jinping would not even talk to Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy kept on requesting, and he kept on getting refused. And now that the Chinese are accepting, they're doing exactly what I was saying a couple of months ago. And I was telling everyone, if the West was smart, we would warn Ukraine with an inch of their lives. If they go towards the Chinese side, it's over with us and them. And a lot of people said, we don't like that. That sounds too aggressive. Zelensky's a smart guy, but I'm not seeing anything at this point where Ukraine looks like they have respectable distance that they're taking with China. They are open to almost everything at this point. It's like they're not even seeing what the Chinese are going to be trying to do in the future. And
I just want to see what the Ukrainian people really think about this, because like I've said before, since they're not holding elections in Ukraine because the law says that there's no elections during wartime, there's really no referendum of the people to see whether or not they like the direction in which the government is taking the country when it comes to dealing with China. Because I have a feeling that Ukraine as a country might not be too fond about that, considering the fact that the West has supported them so much. So, honestly to me, I'm going to say this right out. I don't worship any politician. I don't care if it's Zelenskyy or whoever it is. I don't worship politicians. They are politicians, and at the end of the day, they're there to serve a job and serve the people. So, me personally, I think there should be some sort of referendum or election that's held to let the people in Ukraine decide.
Uh-oh. Oh, no. Can you hold that thought, Matthew? I'm going to restart my Discord so that way we don't run into this problem over and over. Hello?
Hello?
I'm going to restart my Discord. Keep that thought that you had right there because the Discord call cut off again. I'm going to restart my Discord so that way this doesn't keep going on. So everyone give me just a second and we will be back. So sorry for that, everyone. We want to make sure that that call would be connected properly. And Matthew, what were you saying there?
So I'm actually going to wrap it up very quickly with this. I think that there should be elections in Ukraine. Zelenskyy has mentioned holding elections, and to let the people have a voice, they have to be able to let it be heard at the ballot box in Ukraine. Not the battle box, but the ballot box. But they do need to have an election there, and they need to make that happen because right now, with decisions like this being made toward Chinese relations with Ukraine, this is starting to delve into territory which the Ukrainian people really should have a say in. And unfortunately, with the current law in place that prevents elections during wartime, that is hindering the ability of the Ukrainians to have a say in it. So I'd be curious to see what they had to say at the ballot box.
I would have to say that as well at this point. I do think, considering the direction the Ukrainian government is going in, which is possibly like I'm gonna say this, and because I would like to be honest with y'all about my assessment here, it is possibly moving Chinese, and if it's moving Chinese, there is a decent argument that it could be moving towards a more authoritarian direction, as most Chinese-aligned governments usually do. I feel like an election in Ukraine should be held at this point, whether there is a war or not, to see if the Ukrainian people would possibly like to continue a pro-Western direction, or maybe the Ukrainian population actually is on board with a pro-Chinese direction. And if so, maybe we need to let China step up and help them out in this war and see how that goes. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. Very strong worded opinions there from Matthew and me, but I want to make sure to preface this very clearly, just to make sure that people know this. We have been pro-Ukraine for 885 days of this war without question. Every single Sunday, we run fundraisers for nonprofits that operate in Ukraine and help them out. But at the end of the day, there's a line I draw in between being pro-Ukrainian and looking out for Ukraine's interests, and then the priority, which is looking out for American interests and, as a whole, the Western sphere's interests. The Western sphere's interests are going to triumph over Ukraine's interests in my decision-making every single day of the week. And if something appears to no longer be beneficial or productive for the Western sphere, even if it is at the detriment of Ukraine, then that decision will be made. This channel is pro-Western through and through. We support any country around the world that is either Western aligned or promoting and improving the situation of the Western world. If that is no longer the situation anymore, then there will have to be changes made to how things are going. That's largely how I look at it. I'm not pro-Ukraine to the point I would let them do things to the detriment of the West, to the detriment of the American viewers watching, and the detriment to the rest of our viewers watching around the world, mostly inside of Europe and East Asia. I will not allow for anyone to do any harm or damage to the great upstanding folks who make up this amazing Western sphere of all of those who are watching right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so that was our only poll to address, but were we on a poll or a question? I can't remember.
We were on a poll, I believe, if I'm correct.
All right. I believe we were on the poll. I can't remember through all the lag and stuff like that. But anyways, jumping into our Super Chat segment, the last segment of the night, we have a $50 donation from Boulder Boy. And thank you very much, Boulder Boy, for that very generous $50 donation. We appreciate it very much. He says, I'm taking the week off to camp near Kenosha Pass in Colorado, and keep up the good work in my absence.
And hey, and thank you so much for the support, Boulder Boy. And Kenosha, and let's see, Kenosha Pass. Let's see. Oh, wait a minute. I was typing that in the wrong place. Kenosha Pass in Colorado. Let's see here. So here's Kenosha Pass. Wow, where is this? It's just outside of Denver. I knew it was going to be outside of Denver because that's usually where these places are. But let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at the pictures more so. Oh, that's really pretty. Dude, that's really pretty.
That's nice.
Wow, I like this. I mean, like, I'd be dang. Dude, I would like to go out here and check this thing out. You know something else I want to check out, Matt? You know what I'm about to say. It's going to be something related to, like, trains or something, because I'm really on trains lately, like, this week. Let's see, it's the, the Rio Grande, Railroad. Maybe that's it. I think this is it. Where is that? Because, oh, here we go. I mean, permanently closed. Oh, that okay, hang on. We're good. So, where in the world? Okay, so maybe this is it? No? No? Where the hell is it? Where is it? Okay, so hang on. Some people may know what I'm talking about. There's a narrow gauge railroad out here in Colorado. It's really pretty. It's really cool. I'd like to go out there one day and see it. It's just that I don't know when I'd ever be able to have the time to go out there and see it. But I would like to. I think it'd be really cool. I think it'd be really neat. And I wish I could find the freaking thing. I don't know where it is. Maybe it's near Black Hawk, I think. Maybe. Is it? Nope. I'm not seeing it. I think it's like the Denver. No, it's like the Silverton and wait, hang on. Silverton and Durango. Is that it? Hang on, let me go look. Yeah, here we go. So where's Silverton? We need to go find Silverton. Let's see here. So here's Silverton. And this is in Colorado, right? Oh, wow, this is way far away from Denver. This is a lot farther away. And so it goes from Silverton to Durango. So we have to find the thing that I'm looking for because it's really cool. Like when you see it, you'll be like, wow, that's actually pretty neat. It's like one of the few historical railways left in America. And it's just really interesting to look at because this was back when the narrow gauge was pretty much the primary form of transportation and the only economical form of transportation in the entirety of the Rocky Mountains. So it was like the primary source of movement for really everyone. And I can't find it, man. Like, where the hell is this thing? It's somewhere. Wait, is this? No? Where is it? Okay, hang on. I'm just gonna go and show you all the thing. Let me go get it. Let me go grab it. Okay, so this is it. So it is right there. Why in the world? I don't know why in the world it's not showing this so easily for me here. But anyways, here it is. I just went and threw this up. This is probably the easiest thing to do. So it is a narrow gauge railroad that travels through the Rocky Mountains, and it actually runs a heritage fleet of narrow gauge locomotives that were actually used on the Durango and Silverton, which is really, really cool. I think that's really neat. Matthew's gonna be like, damn, he's still on that train stuff. And I know it's something that I got obsessed with lately.
Damn,
so,
man, you still on that train stuff?
Man, I really am, man. Like, I really am on that train stuff. But it's freaking neat. I mean, like, it really is cool to me, at least. I think it's really neat. And I see JD Mago say, trains are rad. They are. I mean, they're great. They're like airplanes or trucks. You know, because some people are into 18-wheelers, which is called a semi-truck in Europe. And then some people are into planes. And then some people are into trains. Me, personally, I like trains the most. I don't know what it is. I really just find them interesting, and I like that they're economical, and not only that, there's such a wide variety of them, and it's really like the most fleshed out form of modern transportation there is, because it was like the first. Like the horse and buggy, all that, you know, it is not around anymore as an actual mode of transport. The locomotive still is, and I mean, the locomotive has been around for 220, 230 years now in a usable form. And it's pretty impressive to think it still goes on today. And you can just see so many different parts and eras of history just in our forms of transportation. And most of it is in the train. So I just find that incredibly cool. And also, Butch Triple 7, does the Enforcer have a train set? No. I probably never will, but I have a lot of train games now. I got Railroader last night, thanks to the suggestion of y'all, some of y'all. And I've got to say, I'm loving it. It is really cool. I was able to play a little bit of it, really liked it. Mike T said energy efficient. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing about trains is that they are so much more energy efficient per ton than anything else. Like, did you know, Matthew, that to carry a ton of cargo 1 mile on a train, it is only 4 cents per mile?
That's not bad. I didn't know the exact like math there, like to know how cheap it was, but I'd heard that it's very economical to take the train for cargo, so that's very interesting.
Yeah, wildly economical. That's compared to, I think, like 10 cents for an 18-wheeler per ton per mile, and like I think it's like 26 cents for an airplane per ton per mile if you're doing like bulk transit. So it is actually very economical, the railroads are, and I just wish that railroads were as popular as they used to be back in the day in America, because if many of y'all don't know, because a lot of people associate America in the modern day with car culture, but before the cars really became a thing in America, America was entirely a railway culture country. We were the king of the railroads. The United States had more rails than any other country in the world. We had the most express services than any country in the world. And there are rumors that we actually had the fastest trains in the world. Now, the United Kingdom actually holds the official title for that with the Class A4, the Mallard, which reached 126 miles per hour at its top speed, but only did that for a limited amount of time. But they say that the Pennsylvania Railroad T1s actually hit 140 miles per hour. It's just that it was never recorded with a measuring van, which would measure the speed accurately to be able to confirm that. But I got to say this really quickly. I got to show you all this because some of y'all are going to be like, what are you talking about, a T1? So this is the Pennsylvania Railroad T1. And this thing supposedly hit 140 miles an hour at some point. So this thing was a high-speed train, no joke, which is really cool to think that America had engines that at least technically reach those kinds of speeds. But, you know, we don't really know if it really did or didn't because there was no measuring van traveling along with it. But anyways,
Also, by the way, I see War City said in the live chat that he said we need a higher grade train system, in my opinion. And do you agree?
yes.
We really do. We need a higher grade train system indeed, because there's not necessarily anything wrong with our Amtrak, but it's not exactly really nice, as like European trains are. And I get it that a lot of people in America don't take the train, and it's not as common a form of transportation as it is in Europe. But at the same time, with us being one of the most wealthy countries on the planet, we should definitely have a train system which matches that look. I don't know why we don't have that yet. There's been a lot of talk for many decades about, oh, we need a Hyperloop, we need this, we need that, we need a nice train, but yet it's never happened. We can barely get the roads paved. But Enforcer, what were you about to say?
I would say this. Back in the day, the federal government would subsidize railroads to run services, passenger rail services. It was a very, very successful model for a good while until we started to cut their subsidies and we started to subsidize highway and interstate construction instead. Like we did the classic, we can't spend money in both places, although we clearly have the money, so let's just give all the money to one thing and then screw the other. And that's what we did to the railroads. We ended up giving the money mostly to interstates, and then later on we ended up giving it all to the aviation sector, which is why a lot of the airlines nowadays really rely a lot on the government for subsidies because most of them are not profitable. That's the big thing about public transportation is that usually the companies that are in public transportation are not profitable. But the big thing, the crazy, stupid thing about that concept, especially with airlines, is that rail companies were profitable. Like, even with the passenger services, they were still wildly profitable because most of them would do passenger and freight. So like with here, like this is a Pennsylvania railroad and this is now a defunct company. They don't exist anymore. I think they were absorbed by Norfolk Southern or BNSF. I'm not really sure, but they were absorbed by one or the other after Penn Central collapsed, which was a mix of Pennsylvania Railroad and the New York Central Railroad. But anyways, beyond that, back in the day, we would subsidize them. And so they would run freight and they would make profits. I mean, freight is a massive moneymaker. And so this Pennsylvania Railroad would make money off of the freight. But they would also run government subsidized, non-profitable, pretty much, railway passenger services, usually express. They went to every length to make their trains as luxurious as they could back in the day and as fast as they could as well, because there was a huge incentive to do so because, one, it was subsidized by the government, so no matter what expense was paid, some of it would be covered. Pretty much all the losses you took would be covered by the U.S. federal government. And second, it was a huge reputation thing, because when people thought of Pennsylvania Railroad, they wouldn't think of those crappy freight trains, just moving freight around, looking like garbage, kind of like CSX does nowadays. They would think of a streamlined locomotive like this and that extremely luxurious experience that they would get on these trains, and they go, dang, like Pennsylvania Railroad was a pretty good company. And considering that a lot of people traveled on the train, businessmen would ride these trains, and then they go, dang, that express service they have is pretty freaking good. If it was that good, their freight service has got to be great too. I'm going to contract with Pennsylvania Railroad to handle my freight. And so it was a win-win. Like, it was a great idea. If we could just subsidize private companies now, because it worked back in the day for America. Privatized rail, I don't know if that works in the UK, but then again, nationalized rail really doesn't work either, so I don't know what Britain's doing with that right now. But in America, privatized rail passenger services did work. It's just that they stopped working when we gave up on them. If we really went into that again, I think it would succeed. A lot like the Bright Line in Florida is succeeding right now. It is showing that there is a demand out there for good passenger rail service in America. People want it if it's there. And if we could just subsidize these companies, to be able to get them back into the passenger rail service, just subsidize them for the passenger rail services and also any infrastructure improvements needed to get the rails up to spec for high-speed travel, then I would go all in on it. Like, that would be something I can tell y'all, diving into one of my policy points that I know will still be standing in 2040. If it isn't there yet, I would be making sure to bring up high-end railway infrastructure in America as an actual viable thing, at least by 12 years out. So hopefully my predecessor would carry that on, because that certainly wouldn't be able to be done in just one two-term administration by one president. But with that, I hope that does address that well. At least in my opinion. But if I could ever go out there to where the Kenosha Pass is in Colorado, I'd probably go down there to Durango and Silverton to check that out too, because that is incredibly cool to see in a really neat part of American history as well. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and I hope you have a great load of fun out there, Boulder Boy. And let us know how it was when you come back. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so let's check out that poll real quick. It says, should Ukraine hold elections to allow the people to have a say in the direction of their country? 46% said yes, elections need to be held soon in Ukraine, while 41% said no, no election until the war is completely over, and 1% said Ukrainian people don't need a say. So I guess the 1% must be Russians or something, because that means you're not holding elections at any point, and you're advocating for a dictatorship in Ukraine. So obviously, I'm not for that whatsoever. But I will say, for me, I would say that elections do need to be held soon, because if the Ukrainian constitution says that elections can't be held during war, let's say this war goes on for another 5 to 10 years. Like, that sounds like far-fetched, but let's say that is a possibility. Zelensky's going to be serving for a hell of a long time without any say by the people as to whether or not they like the direction he's taking the country or not. And that, to me, does not sound very democratic. So I would say that even though it might be difficult to hold the election during wartime, I get that, it's going to be probably very difficult. They need to figure out a way to get that done, because they do have a full-time staff in the Ukrainian government, which can figure that out. They have the time to figure it out, and they also have the resources as well. The U.S. has offered to step in and help them hold the election, and they need to do that. And they need to change that law that they have there that prevents the election, because that is not going to be good overall. Because, like I said, if this war drags out, Zelensky's going to basically be there with no oversight, which is not good. So I'm with the 47%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 47% as well. Democracy prevails only when people vote, and when people have a chance to vote. And so, like in the United States, we religiously have an election for president every 4 years, elections for representatives every 2 years, and elections for senators every 6 years. I believe that is the only way that America can truly claim it as a democracy, is because people have a ability, not just a right to vote, but an ability to vote, because there's always elections going on. And it allows the people's say, at least in a sense, to be heard. Hopefully, at least that's what it's supposed to do in practice. Ukraine needs to do the same thing. Now, I know their constitution is largely a post-Soviet constitution, and so it has a clause in it saying that there cannot be any elections held until after a state of war is over. But I would have to say that that seems a little bit weird, because, like, technically, one thing that's interesting, technically, Zelenskyy should have never been elected, to be entirely honest, because Ukraine was at a state of war in the Donbass in 2018 when he originally got elected, in that 2018 election. And so that is actually weird to think about, Matthew, because Poroshenko got elected during the Donbass conflict. Zelenskyy did too. And now, to be honest, it's the Donbass conflict on a far larger scale, but the front lines are about as stagnant as they were back then. And now we're having a conversation about whether an election can really be held or not, when at no other point in Ukrainian modern history, when there was an ongoing war in the Donbass, there was ever a question of whether an election could be held or not. The elections were still held. So I would say, in my opinion, another election should be held. And so with that,
and also, you can definitely have elections during a war. Like, I'm not sure why some people are saying that. We've held elections during wartime here in the United States. We've done it, and every other country that's democratic has done it as well. So I get that their law says that it's not supposed to happen, but at the same time, and also, you're free to have your opinion, by the way. I'm not trying to attack anybody that thinks this, but are y'all advocating that Zelenskyy stay there for, like, let's say another decade? It's like, without an election? I mean, that doesn't sound right to me. If I was a Ukrainian, I'd be very pissed off about that personally. I'd be thinking, hey, look, I get the fact we're at war, But we need to have a say, though. Like, what are we fighting for if we can't even have a say in the government? And obviously the law says it, but at the same time, it's just not democratic.
Also, some people are saying you can't have an election during a war. I disagree. The 1945 United Kingdom general election is completely contrary to that. The British had an election in July of 1945. The British were still fighting in the Pacific in World War II during this time and had an election that actually ousted, I believe, yes, I believe it did actually oust the sitting Prime Minister Winston Churchill and brought forward Clement Attlee. And that was in the middle of World War II still. I mean, the war in Europe was ended, sure, but the war in the Pacific was still going on, and election was still held. Because that's how democracies work. It doesn't matter whether there's a war going on or not. Because if for some reason emergency scenarios strip your democracy of being a democracy completely, where you don't even vote, is it a democracy, or is it only a democracy of convenience? I mean, we had an election in the United States during the Civil War. We had the U.S. election of 1864. And here's another example of a presidential election held in the middle of the U.S. Civil War. You can actually see here the electoral map. Literally, none of the Confederate states even voted, except for Louisiana, because Louisiana was under complete control of the Union at that point, and so they actually were able to vote, and so was Tennessee. But beyond that, they actually held an election, even with half the country, a belligerent nation pretty much on its own, and they were fighting against them. We still held an election in 1864. And to this day, no matter how many major wars the United States have gotten into, the U.S. Civil War is still the bloodiest war in U.S. history to this day, and we still held an election in that war. We lost as many people in the American Civil War as the Russian Federation has lost wounded and killed in this war, and we lost those in raw numbers of dead. 550,000 or 600,000 American citizens died in the U.S. Civil War, and we still held an election in the middle of that.
Also, the truth is that Zelenskyy would probably win re-election. Like, personally, I think he probably would. He's done a good job during the war. But the point is not to try to oust Zelenskyy. The point is to make sure that they're holding elections properly, like a democratic country should. Because, like, kind of like the enforcer was alluding to earlier, Ukraine, if they wanted to, could simply say, we're in a perpetual state of war because Russia's our neighbor, and while Russia exists, we're always going to be at war with them in some way, and just keep it at that state forever. That would subvert the elections for indefinitely until they changed it. So, I mean, that's a bad loophole right there. They should really rethink that. And, you know, I'm going to stop right there, but they should really rethink that for certain.
I saw a word guy say, yeah, but it's not just a law, it's the Ukrainian constitution. There is a way around that, which is a constitutional amendment. Much like every country in the world, a constitution can be amended. And they could just make an amendment to the constitution saying, we now have elections in wartime. They could make that an amendment, and they could start to run an election during wartime if they wanted to. It's just a matter of amending their constitution to where that would actually be a legal route. Because the Constitution isn't set in stone. The United States Constitution isn't set in stone. I mean, we've had amendments added through the years. I mean, like, ever since the beginning of the country, we've had, I think, 27 or 28 amendments added to the U.S. Constitution. One of those amendments was an amendment to rule out the other amendment. We had an amendment creating the prohibition of alcohol in the United States, and then we had an amendment making that one null and void, and that was the whole point of the other amendment, because it sucked that bad. But you can actually, like, a constitution is not set in stone. The U.S. Constitution isn't set in stone either. The U.S. law isn't set in stone. That's why the Supreme Court of the United States makes decisions on what is constitutional and unconstitutional, and that changes in its own right what the Constitution means without an amendment even being passed, because the way the law is interpreted, laid out in the Constitution, is understood differently from time to time. Hell, like in America, like I want to put this out here for y'all, because while this is a little bit of a touchy subject, this is one that's important to cover. Plessis versus Ferguson was a case in the U.S. Supreme Court that laid out that African Americans were not people, they were property. Now, that is something that has changed massively in the modern day, and actually changed right after the U.S. Civil War. But at a time, that was the way that the U.S. law was understood. And that was pretty messed up. I think everyone can agree with that. And still, it was not set in stone. The Supreme Court just went back later and went, oh yeah, the people back then, yeah, they were wrong. That's absolutely just wrong, just on a human level, not just on a legal level. That's a reprehensible, so that's not the law anymore. And the law was changed. And so things like constitutional law are not set in stone. And I think that's probably one of the greatest examples, because that was probably one of the most screwed up Supreme Court decisions ever made in American history. And thank God it was reversed, because that was a very, very whack one. But still, the whole point of me bringing up one of the most whack Supreme Court decisions inside the United States is to explain that constitutional law can be changed, especially if it's not appropriate anymore for the time, or if the nation has decided that that action or that idea, that legal premise, is wrong, just like we did with Plessy versus Ferguson. The Ukrainians can do that with the Ukrainian constitutional clause that an election cannot be held if they're in a state of war. There can just be an amendment saying elections can be held while in a state of war, and an election can go forward. So there is no like magic thing just completely stopping them where they have to wait until the end of the war. If there's a will, there's a way, and they could hold an election in the war if they wanted to, or if they figured it out. And I would have to say I think one should be held so that way the citizenry can have their say. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, at least in my opinion. I feel like that example is a fairly good one to hit that home, and to get the idea across that laws can change. So most of the time, hopefully for the better, much like with Plessy versus Ferguson being overturned, that was by far for the better. And I think that constitutional amendment I'm speaking about in Ukraine would probably be for the better. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, I see a good question from Rob Eisman that I'll address real quick because we got to get to our super chats next. But Rob said, should Ukrainians that left their country illegally be allowed to vote? And I will say this up front. That is a question for the Ukrainians to answer. So my opinion is my opinion about it, but ultimately it means nothing because it's Ukraine's country. But me personally, as an outsider, I would say no, because if they left illegally, that means they avoided the war, they avoided fighting for their country, and they abandoned their countrymen. So why should they be allowed to vote and have a say when they simply abandoned the whole thing? At that point, I would say that it's arguable whether or not they're a citizen anymore, because they fled and they basically committed treason of sorts. So that's just my take on it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with that. I believe that Ukrainian citizens that fled the country illegally have conducted an act paramount to treason, and for that reason they have largely been stripped of their citizenship and their right to vote. That would be my personal opinion, but that is once again something that the Ukrainian nation has to decide, and considering that a lot of their people, millions of them, are abroad, that is probably something that it could be argued will get in the way of democracy, is that most Ukrainians, whether they left legally or illegally, may not have a say in the government of, in how the government of old will end up changing, which could be an argument. So that would be my personal opinion, but I would say that is not binding at all, and no one should go running around spreading that one. It's just my personal opinion, and I think the Ukrainians should be able to decide those kinds of affairs internally. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Good question, though, Rob Eisman. Very good one. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving back to our super chats, we have a $20 donation from Sexual Tyrannosaurus. I don't know what's going on with that Tyrannosaurus, but they're crazy. But thank you very much for that $20 support, seriously speaking. They said, I love the channel, and I normally can't watch the live chats because I have to get up early in the morning, so I watch them the next day, and I'm hooked on it, and keep up the great work, guys.
And I gotta say, huge thank you so much to Sexual Tyrannosaurus, very, very active Tyrannosaurus. And I gotta say, thank you so much for enjoying the channel. And of course, thank you for making the pilgrimage as well to a live stream. Tonight has been a very interesting live stream with everything that's going on, but I hope that people have been enjoying it nevertheless. But beyond that, I gotta say, I thank you so much for being hooked on the show and getting up every morning to watch it. I love to know that people enjoy this channel so much, and they get to hear interesting things. They get to talk to amazing, interesting people in the live chat. Everything about this channel is really nice. It is. Now I can't speak for our talking. Some people may or may not like that, but as far as actually getting to talk to people inside of the live chat and everything is absolutely incredible every single night. And tonight's certainly no exception. There's been some very interesting, thought-provoking things said by folks in the chat, and some funny things and everything else. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got one from John B. Rempel, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, John, for that support as well. He says, keep up the good work, gentlemen, and take one from the chat, please.
And we will keep up that good work, John B. Rempel. Thank you so much once again for being an old guard and always being here and always helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are going to be making sure to grab one from the live chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to W13RD Guy. He said, did Lloyd Austin call Zelenskyy to put a stop to a Ukrainian covert operation inside of Russian territory?
I would have to declare ignorance on that because if anything along those lines ever happen is probably deeply classified or confidential or on a need-to-know basis, and so I would personally not know that information to be able to confirm or deny that. Kind of like the train robbery stuff. I've never heard the train robbery stories. I haven't heard that one either. So unfortunately, I'll have to declare ignorance on that question. But still, thank you so much once again, John B. Rimple, for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who helped make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and let's see here. I saw an interesting question from Diego Gomez. This is a very good question right here. I like these type of questions that are really thought-provoking like this. They said, think for one moment you have 2 sons and a wife, and you have to choose. What do you or will you choose? Will you defend your family or your country? I would probably do this, as hard as it would sound and as hard as it would actually be in reality. I would say the wife and kids, you're going to have to leave the country until it gets safe. And I'm going to have to stay here and fight because I can't just leave the country, even though we're going to be splitting up our family, and that would be absolutely traumatic. I can't just abandon the country because that would be abandoning everything, including our family members, our previous family members that had passed away, and everything. So I'm not going to lie, that would be a very tough situation to be in. And I'm sure a lot of Ukrainians have faced that situation in reality. But you just can't leave the country. I mean, you just can't do it. That's treason. It's wrong.
That's
and
cowardice.
I get the dilemma. Yeah, I get the dilemma here. You obviously have your family you're considering, but you can't just run off, though. You can't do that. But that's just me. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I would have to agree with what Matthew said. It's a tough thing, sure, and everyone wants to be with their family and stay with their family, and no one wants war. I mean, like I said it's paramount to cowardice, and that's true. But everyone's scared. I mean, everyone is going to be terrified when a war starts. Hell, if someone told me I got drafted, I'd be scared. I mean, I'd be scared to death. But it's a part of your duty to your nation that when you're called upon to serve it, especially in an extreme circumstance like an invasion of your homeland, the place you've lived, you've grown up in, you've known everyone around. It's the place that fed, clothed, and sheltered you your entire life until you grew up, and then you started to do the same for your kids on that land. That is your country. That is your home. You have to fight for it because that's all you have. If you don't have a country, you have nothing. And so while it may be scary and while it may be tough, you got to defend your nation. It is a priority. It is a necessity. I mean, if for some reason something happened and there was an actual army invading here in Alabama, I would go, and if I was called upon to serve, I would serve. I would be scared the entire time. I know I would be. I would be terrified, just like everyone else would be. Everyone's going to be terrified in that kind of a situation. But bravery is being scared, but still doing what you have to do. That's what it is. It's not being fearless, because being fearless is really being foolhardy. It's more so about being scared, but still stepping up and doing what you got to do. For me, of course, family is incredibly important. And while they can go off to safety, as far as it goes as a duty, especially for a man, because the law requires that men have a bit of a different relation to love of country than women do, at least by the law here in the United States. A man must serve to defend the country. It is just what must be done. It's a part of. It's not only the law here in America that all males sign up for selective service. It is really our national duty to have to defend this nation, because if you sit there and you run away with your family, like let's say no other country will accept you, where do you run? I mean, like what if every country around Ukraine shut them off and said, we're taking no refugees? Well, you picked your family, you picked up and ran, but where to? And eventually the Russians are going to catch up to you. They're going to take over the whole country if everyone picks up and runs. So what did you protect them from in the end? You protected them from nothing. You didn't defend your country, and you didn't save your family either. You just ended up screwing everyone over with cowardice. And so I hope that addresses that well, at least in my opinion. And I know I know a lot of people are going to be saying, that's so easy to say because you don't have a family and you've never been in a war. And those things are entirely true. But you don't have to have been involved in a war, and you don't have to have a family to have an idea that defending your nation, where your family is an important thing. Because if you run from that and you give it up, what do you have left? I mean, what if another country doesn't take you? What if they send you back? What if they sent you back and then they found out you ran? Like, well, all those things. It's not a good thing. War is not a good thing. But that I would say is worse than actually having to go and fight in a war is pretty much betraying your nation and your countrymen and running away. As tough as it may be to fight, you have to. But with that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can, in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Mike Wilson, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Mike, for that support. He says, Israel will hit Iran as Iran supplied the rocket.
And you would think so, Mike, but back in the day when Iran actually fired at Israel with hundreds of rockets and drones, they hardly did anything back. And so it really makes me beg the question, would they ever do anything against Iran? Because the United States is holding them back from that. So what would end up happening? I don't know. But I would say that would be a smart move right there. If Iran is providing the weapons, hit Iran. That's what I would want them to do. But I don't know if they're actually going to do that in practice, sadly. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Mike Wilson. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Steve T, who also puts in a 20, and thank you very much, Steve, as well, for that support.
Hey!
He said, it sounds like the enforcers need to have a bet on Israel, maybe an eyebrow for Matt, if under a week, or the enforcer 1 to 2 weeks. But over 2 weeks, neither lose an eyebrow. And yes, I've lost bets like this before. Steve, that's why I would never make a bet like that, because I could tell you for certainty I would end up losing it. If something was going to happen, like for example, if Israel was going to attack in 24 hours, it would reverse and it would never happen if I made a bet like that, because I would end up losing it. So I would never make a bet like that because I don't want to lose eyebrows. But thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to say that in my opinion, I don't think I'd make a bet like that either, because here's how things go with that. Matthew would make that bet on air, or I would make that bet on air, and I'd be like, if it's in less than a week, I'll shave my eyebrow. And the Lebanese government, well, not the Lebanese government, the Hezbollah someone would be watching our show, they go, wouldn't it be funny if he shaved his eyebrow? Okay, go. And then it'd be like, damn it. It's like, they win. It's like, oh no, I gotta shave it. Because what is weird, y'all? What is so weird? We put out a post on Twitter, and we realized how many people in governments around the world are looking at our Twitter. I mean, we had, what was it, Matthew, like 9 ambassadors on one of the last posts? Something like that. It was like
a lot. A good number of ambassadors from European countries. And also, we already had the Jan Lipovsky, who's, what country is that?
He's the Czech foreign minister.
The Czech foreign minister. It's weird to see like actual government officials watching our Twitter account, because you wouldn't think like it's like we're just a YouTube channel, but it's like it's actually very honored to see.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's like we're just sitting here, you know, 2 guys in a house in a basement running the show, and then we sit there, bing, and we look down. Jan Lipovsky, he follows us. It's like, he's a foreign minister, and then you know we get a mention in Petraeus' book. And then we know that we actually have another person watching. I can't say who they are, but they were a former national security advisor to the office of the president at the time. And it's so weird to have all of these people watching. It's like, you know, because like at the end of the day, we are just 2 people in a basement, and we're just saying things that honestly I've been saying since high school about all kinds of stuff. And it's very weird to actually have people listen, you know, like, and especially people at those positions listen, because I would assume that that, you know, they would be insulted by our show because they would know way more than I do about current affairs and situations, but nevertheless they watch, and I gotta say we're really honored by that. But at the same time, that's the reason why I wouldn't make a bet like that, because someone from Hezbollah would be watching the show and they'd be like, wouldn't that be funny? Like if they had to shave their eyebrow, okay, let's do this or that. But anyways, with that, I hope that, I'm just kidding with that, by the way, we're not that important, I'm just joking about that. But anyways, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support to Steve T. Really funny idea, though. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jason Carpenter, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jason, for that support as well. He said, stuff is getting out of hand, and something needs to be done to restore order. And I don't exactly know what that is, but it seems like we're reaching a tipping point, and it's all very troubling. And I love the show, guys, and LSA rules.
And LSA for life. I love the LSA. And also, thank you so much for enjoying the show once again, Jason Carpenter. And also, I would agree with you. Something needs to be done. That's what I've been saying time and time again. I'd only... That's a tough one. I can't get into that. Yeah, sadly, I can't get into that. I had to think that one out. I can't say that. But I will say something needs to be done. And hopefully, one day, something will be done. I just don't know when, though. But with that, I do thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because it is folks like y'all who helped make this channel possible. But sadly, I can't make too much of a comment on that because it actually it would be non-political by our rule because I'd be criticizing both sides, but it would get so exacting that people would probably take it as political, even though it would be a fair critique of everyone currently in the political running. But that is what it is. But I still thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Brad Wall, who puts in a 20, and thank you very much, Brad, as well. He said, Enforcer, a little while back, you were getting some severe headaches while broadcasting, and on those days, did you experience more screen time than usual? And they say that excessive screen time can cause eye strain and migraines, and LSA.
Sadly, well, actually, luckily, I wasn't really getting a lot of screen time. I get a lot of screen time every day, so relative to any other day, it wasn't really that much more or that much less. It was probably about the same. I think the headaches were coming from stress. Because while I don't talk about it a lot on stream, I actually end up kind of, like, some people are going to say this is anxiety. Nah, it's not. But sometimes things will happen and I just get really stressed out. Like, I get wildly stressed out. Like, I'm just wired, like just straight up wired. I usually don't say a lot about it. I don't say a lot to anyone here in the house. Like I don't tell them, man, I'm stressed out. I'm just stressed and I just deal with it. So I think that was largely what the headaches are from, because usually whenever I get headaches, it's usually because I'm really stressed out. That's really most of the reason why. So, you know, not to let y'all know that, so that way in the future, when y'all hear I have a headache, you're like, what are you stressed out about? But that's usually why I end up getting headaches, is because of stress. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you so much once again for support, Brad Wall, and help with this channel to keep on running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $12 super chat from Duncan VR, who puts in the animal noises as usual. He says, Baba, moo, quack. Happy 44th birthday to many. And thank you very much. Thank you very much, Duncan. He said, Baba, the marmot is drunk. Meow. Woof, woof, vote one for the marmot. And Bob, meow, quack, for the hot dog fun. Baba.
The hot dog fun. Oh man, dude, you know some of the things we said tonight are for sure going to be made a soundbite by that clown. He's gonna be, look, I'm exposing him. Like I wouldn't stand behind the statements we made. Like, people, I don't know why people don't get that, man. It's like, when you say something on air, we're gonna back it up. It's like we don't say the crap and then act like no one's paying attention. I mean, 83,000 people have been here tonight. I know 83,000 people hear what I say, so it's like I'm not gonna sit there and say something that I wouldn't back up like 2 days later. Yeah.
Listen, if anybody goes out there, like for example, a hot dog man or anybody, and wants to clip a part of me saying that Ukraine should hold elections because it's democratic, go right ahead, because I'll stand behind that 100%. That actually, to me, is showing that we care for Ukraine, because the people of Ukraine are what matters, not the government in Ukraine. The government just needs to be democratic. It doesn't really matter who's in charge of it, as long as the people elected that person. That's all that matters. It can be Zelenskyy or anybody. I don't worship Zelenskyy. He's just a politician. He's done a really good job during the war, but he's no one to start worshiping. He's just a guy like everybody else who's been put there to do a job. He's really good at it, but of course it comes down to the people to determine whether or not that's the case. So if someone wants to clip it and say I'm pro-Russian, go right ahead, because I'm not, and my track record proves it.
And also, like, that's another thing, like, you know, because I was talking earlier about the Ukrainians possibly going to the Chinese, and I was getting very adamant that if they did something like that, or they looked like they were going that way and there was no coming back, the West shouldn't support Ukraine anymore. I say that on air, and I mean it. Like, it's not something that if someone came up to me and said, did you say that? I'm going to say, hell yeah, because, like, well, I'm pro-Ukraine, sure, but if they start to go to the Chinese side, I'll tell you one thing I certainly am not. I'm not pro-Chinese, and if they decide to go that route, then that's not a Western route, and that's not what we're for. Like, I'll say that outright. That's not what we're for. And I would say this, the Ukrainian government should better realize that, because if other people in the U.S. government have that kind of thinking, where it's pro-Western interests over everything, it does not matter if Ukraine thinks the Chinese path is better for them. If it crosses paths with us, that's not going to be that great. They would better be mindful of that, because that is not going to end up doing them well if they actually start to move towards the Chinese path. I'll say that 100%, till the cows come home, because I believe in that. And you know, like I was saying earlier, I'll say it again just to hit it home. And this entire audience here that's watching is Western. We have about, let's see, I think it's like 6,000 Ukrainian viewers a month out of about the 7 million viewers that we have. Most of y'all are from Western countries. Half of y'all are from America. The other half of y'all are from English-speaking countries in the Western world. And then the rest of y'all are from Germany and Sweden. And also France. But all of y'all are in Western countries. And that means, of course, me being an American and me running the show with pro-Western interests in mind, if anything starts to be at the detriment of y'all as Western viewers, then I'm against it. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter anything. Like, if it benefits y'all, I'm for it. If it does not benefit y'all, then it is fine to cut it loose and then move on to something else. That's how I mentally work things here, because I'm not going to be one to say, why yes, let's just throw all of my Western viewers under the bus and do something to their detriment that isn't going to help any of us, and it only hurts us for no gain or no benefit for anyone whatsoever. That makes no sense to me, and I'll stand by that until the end of my days. I'll stand by that for anything. Like if Taiwan said, we actually like the communist Chinese now, and we want to be a part of communist China, I'd say, okay, goodbye. That's exactly what I'd say. Because if they want to go that path, well, we're not going to help them out with that at all. That's how I would do anyone anywhere, for the large part, because if it isn't going to be in y'all's interest, I'm not for it. And so with that, I hope that does address that for everyone. Hey, Jordan said, don't say 83,000 people watch the stream. He's going to get mad about it, talking about the hot dog man. Yeah, he will. But you know something? We can't be too mad, y'all. We can't be too mad, because one, he still hasn't made that hit piece yet. And two, it is time for that marmot. Hey!
Hello! Bring him. Oh, hello there. Hello, Alan. You know something that's funny? You know something good, old boy? You know what I'm talking about? Do you know?
What are you talking about, old boy?
We have approximately, I'm just looking, it's approximate, 83,000 views, and we haven't ended the stream yet. Do you know how many Hot Dog Man got on his last stream?
Well, he gets about that amount of views in a month, Governor.
He got a whopping 2,000 viewers.
Oh! Oh! We get that in like the first 5 minutes. Say what?
Throw to the fly. Oh man, don't make fun of my 2,000 viewers. Oh man, I'm gonna have to go flip a hamburger soon. Oh man, I gotta. Not manual labor, not again.
I'm going to absolutely destroy you with my squad of random fans. Aw, man. I literally have one squad-sized group of fans now. Aw, man. That's 10.
Can anybody do the math, by the way, like on that? Like, if we got 83,000 views right now and he got 2,000, that means we got 43, 42 times more viewers than he got, or something.
So wait a minute, hang on. I'll put it into perspective, and this is with YouTube underreporting our numbers every night, because they're doing it. I'm gonna have to show y'all like screenshots of that and prove that to y'all, because tonight they say that our peak viewership is 6.2. That is a lie. We were up to like 9,000 or close to 9,000 live viewers tonight, because the viewership is showing way more than that. But I think at the peak, man, that he gets up to like maybe 350 live viewers. We beat out his peak in minute 1 of the stream. Like, we were already above the peak for Hot Dog Man. So yeah, he's not.
Man, it's not even a fraction, really. No. Like, it's like 41 times the amount of viewers that he got on his last live stream. It's not even a fraction. Like, it's really like his channel is actually falling off. Like, it's falling off now. It's not falling off. It fell off.
Man, I'm telling you, a lot of people have ended up like that, man, because remember, we looked around and a lot of people are going the way of the dodo in a sort, and I'm like, dang, man, that's wild. Like, that really is wild when you look at it.
Yeah, it's really not wild. It's actually well-deserved. Like, that guy was a devil. Like, he harassed the hell out of us and stuff, and he got exactly what he deserved. It finally came full circle to him.
He's a devil for the drink, Kathleen. He's a devil for the snow, or something like that. But anyway.
Oh yes, he's a devil. Oh, he's out here. He's tormenting the people. He's calling people snakes. He called them snake something. You know. Hello, guys. I'm tired of him talking about me.
Excuse me.
I wish he would stop.
Excuse me, Matthew. Let me. All right, here we go. Welcome back, defenders. Break here. I want him to stop. Like,
Let's see. That guy got bashed. The other guy,
Well,
Ukraine something.
it's not a
He got
pissing
told he
contest.
doesn't know where his brain connects to the body. That was one comment toward him. He called the other guy a snake. Let's see. He jumped on one other person as well. I can't remember who it was. He also jumped on the main guy that we're competing with right now in the Ukraine space. He jumped on him too. I think he's jumped on pretty much everybody at this point. That's what happens when you don't have like the ability to carry a stream on your own, like he doesn't, and then you turn on everybody and all your support goes away. This is what happens.
Dude, if he wasn't in this sphere, dude, I know exactly what he would be. He would be one of those douchebag prankster people who run a YouTube channel, and his pranks aren't pranks; they're just things that hurt people, and then he acts like it's a prank when they get pissed off after they got hurt. Like he'll come up behind someone and whack him in the head with like a metal pole, and they'll almost like shoot him or something. He'll be like, "Whoa, what the hell? It's just a prank, bro. Jeez," or something like that.
It's just a prank, bro. It's just a prank.
Dude, he is one of those kinds of personality types, man. Just a raw narcissist. He could hurt anyone around him and it wouldn't matter as long as it helps him. Like, he is 100% like that.
You remember that though? Like I see DL saying in the live chat, he told that one guy that he got into a fight with. He's fought pretty much every YouTuber at this point. He got into that fight with that one. He said, "Oh man, that YouTuber doesn't know where the brain connects to the body." I was like dying. I was like, "Wait, Andrew, look!" I was like, "Look, he picked a fight with that guy." We were like laughing behind the scenes, laughing our asses off.
Dude, remember when he made that video? Like the little cracked out guy made that video where he's like, "Congratulations, welcome back, defenders, for raising 1.4 million. Wow, that's so good." And then he went literally a week later and went, "That guy's a effing bitch."
Yeah,
Dude,
he
what a
bashed
180.
everybody. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, the only reason he compliments anyone is because he's expecting a shout out or some benefit. If you don't give him that, he's going to cuss you out and treat you like the number one enemy off the bat. That's why we were his number one enemy. His first number one enemy is because he wanted to get a benefit out of us and we didn't give him one, and so he started to hate on us after that. And then everyone else learned later. But they learned after they sided with him, and then they let the lunatic be friends with him for a little bit, and then they got turned on, so then it was even funnier. But anyways, with that, we do have so many questions to cover, Matthew. We have a lot of them. CVATs, actually. CVATs close bracket. And we have to get to as many of them as we can. We have, let's see, 20... Oh my goodness. We have
let's get on with them, man.
Super chats left. And so we're going to be going double speed. Of course, also, well, you know what, we'll just go double speed. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so up first, we have a $10 super chat from Purple Gerbil, and thank you very much, Purple Gerbil, for that support. He said, smash the like, LSA, and take one from the chat.
Hey, thank you so much once again for the support, Purple Dribble, and help this channel to keep on running. Thank you so much for wanting everyone to smash that like. Everyone has been smashing that like. We've gotten up to 2,800 likes. Can we get up to more than that? And also, of course, we will be making sure to take that live chat question in honor of none other than you, Purple Dribble. And so with that, what do we got from the live chat, Matthew, in honor of Purple Dribble?
And this live chat question goes to Michael Norman, who says, do you think Iran will get more directly involved soon?
I think they probably will, especially if Israel gets involved in a direct ground invasion of Lebanon. I do think the Iranians are probably going to get a lot more involved because Hezbollah is kind of where they put all their eggs in one basket. And so I would have to say they probably will start to do that. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat question fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support, Purple Dribble, and sponsoring that live chat question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jam Fan WP Dad, who puts in a $10 donation. Thank you very much for that support. He said, I think Russian nuclear weapons are in the same shape as the rest of the Russians because based on the difficulties updating, we had to update the U.S. arsenals as well. Take the fog bank, for example. What do you think?
I would have to say they probably are in a very bad shape. The Russian Federation doesn't really have a lot of funding. It was about $55 billion per year pre-war. Right now, we assume that it's around $140, $160 billion pre-war, which is also why their government funding is being drained rapidly. But beyond that, they're probably not being able to maintain a lot of these nuclear weapons well, and so most of them probably do not work. But it's a very small amount of them that do work that we're still considerably concerned about, because even one nuclear weapon is enough to be a standoff sort of a situation in a nuclear armed world. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. Thank you so much once again, JamFam WB Dad, for the support and helping this channel keep on running, and I hope I addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, good sir. LSA Sarge, you got all Sarge for that support. And Enforcer, is this one okay to read? I'm not sure about this one. It looks a little sketchy.
Let's see here. Yeah, we can read that, actually. We can. Yes. Please, by all means.
So LSA Sergeant Figment says, Israel has to invade because these people are non-Jewish Israelis, and it could sour Arab-Israeli relations. And take one for the chat boys. And
I thank you so much for the support, LSA Sergeant Figment. I actually have to say that that is fairly true, because also the attack by Hezbollah onto that town actually shows that it's not a anti-Semitic action. It's actually just an anti-Israeli action against the state of Israel and everyone living in it, whether they're Jewish or not. And so for that reason, I would have to entirely agree with you that for Arab-Israeli relations, and also for the fact it's the defense of Israel as a nation, not the actual Jewish people living in Israel, this is a very good reason to be able to go to war with Lebanon, is because they're defending the Israeli people, not a specific religious sect within Israel. And so it becomes more of a secular national security issue than a religious ideology issue like a lot of people have been trying to make it, which is where people start getting divided in the weeds. But with that, I thank you so much once again for support, LC Sergeant Big Man, and we will make sure to take one from the chat in honor of you. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And yes, we have all the questions here in the facts and
yes,
logic, and this one
yeah.
goes to DJ Jure, who says, is Israel entitled to bomb Hezbollah leaders' house and office?
Actually, they are. Yes. Thanks. But beyond that, I'd have to say, maybe they could try and do that. Of course, I believe that collateral should be mitigated as best as possible. That is just a good practice to make. But yes, I do believe that Hezbollah leaders' houses should be targeted and taken out because they are the leader of a Iranian proxy force, and therefore they themselves are a target wherever they may be. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support, LSA Sergeant Pigman, and helping this channel once again to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Corey Steegs,
Hey!
who puts in a $10 donation. Thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He said, one of the ways that we beat the Soviet Union was to bankrupt them with an arms race and sanctions during the Cold War. And do you think that we're taking a similar approach in Ukraine?
I would say that we probably are. We are, of course, supplying Ukraine with a lot of weapons. We are draining the Russians economically, and we are crimping them with sanctions. And so, in my opinion, I would have to say we were probably doing the same things as the Russian Federation, but for some reason, we expect that they're still going to be able to hold out for several years at this point. We're not entirely sure, but I still believe that the war will probably be over by the end of this year or the beginning of next year, although that is an incredibly kind of an optimistic timetable. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. Thank you so much once again for support, and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Maxim Malai, who puts in a $10 donation. Thank you, good sir, for that support as well. They said, El say hello, enforcers, and hello, Maxim. He says, take a question from the chat.
Oh, hello there. And of course, long live the Spring Army. Thank you so much once again for support, Maxim Malay. And we will make sure to take one for the live chat. So what have we got in the live chat, Matthew? And honor Maxim Malay.
And this one goes to Duncan VR. He says, my question is, has Iran got their nukes up and running yet, or is it going to take another week? And where are the damn F-16s, blah, 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 blah?
And where are those F-16s? They should be there by now, and hopefully we'll see them incredibly soon. But to answer the question about the Iranian nukes, we understand that they do not have one at the moment. We are expecting that they'll probably have one in a couple of weeks, but at the moment, we still understand that they are in the process of trying to develop a nuclear weapon, and they haven't even tested one yet. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Very good question, Duncan VR, and thank you once again so much for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, Maxim Malay, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Hector Rodriguez, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, Hector, for the support as well. Hey! He said, okay, I know I haven't supported very much, but I've been watching for a very long time. And thank you very much, Hector. You have been watching for a very long time. And every support means a lot to us, and thank you very much for the support. We appreciate it very much. And whoa, Jack. He said, and thank you very much for being a long-time viewer as well. We appreciate that very much, and thank you very much, Hector. And 4-star, what'd you say? What'd you say?
And I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, Hector Rodriguez, and watching this channel for an incredibly long time. And I gotta say, you don't have to worry about supporting a lot or a little. It's perfectly fine. A lot of people do not have to support this channel. In fact, we're really happy that a lot of people don't have to support this channel, but the few that do, like you tonight, Hector Rodriguez, make it possible for tens of thousands of people to be able to watch this show every single night, absolutely ad-free and sponsor-free, and not having to throw in a single cent or a dime of their own time to be able to watch the show. And I gotta say a huge thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Hector Rodriguez, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make it possible for folks like you to be able to watch the stream for so long without having to watch a single ad, without having to listen about a single sponsor, or without having to pay some sort of a subscription service or something like that to be able to hear the news. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, this one goes to AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, who puts in a $10 donation. Thank you very much for the support. He said, hello, live chat. How are you? And we're doing good. Thank you very much. He said, hello to Enforcer Man. And thank you very much. Good to see you once again. And he said, can I have a live chat question, please?
Oh, hello there, AMX10 Speed Bang Bang. Thank you so much once again for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. Hello to the live chat. Hello to the Enforcers. Hello, Enforcers. Hello. But beyond that, we will make sure to take a live chat question. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. And what do we have in honor of AMX10 Speed Bang Bang, Enforcer Man?
And this one goes to LJ Jidus, who says the USGS, the United States Geological Survey, does not show that the earthquake in North Korea, and it has not sent the messages. Wait, hold on, let me start over. He said the USGS does not show the earthquake in North Korea, and has not since the messages showed up. And what's up with that, and how did it happen?
I would have to say maybe the United States Geological Survey is not able to pick up an earthquake from this area of the world. I would doubt that a little bit, to be entirely honest. But nevertheless, I would have to say that maybe they're just not wanting to publish that information, or they find it to be non sequitur or unimportant, or maybe that is actually a nuclear test, and so the U.S. Geological Survey has decided to forward that to the United States Department of Defense and not inform the public, and let the U.S. Department of Defense do that instead, possibly on in the future. I'm not entirely sure, but that is a very good question, and we'll hopefully find more information or more proof about that earthquake on into the future. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Very interesting live chat question, by the way. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, Kenneth Prosac said, Matt's sounding like a drunk. I'll be honest with you, I've been slurring all my words all over the place tonight and like messing up. I went running 2.5 miles. That wore me down. And then I went swimming afterward as well. So I've been put through the ringer like physically today. So that's why my brain is not fully up to functioning speed tonight, because I'm basically running on empty food review, but I don't have any food. And also the caffeine is not doing anything either for me. It's just like I'm in a daze tonight, basically. But thank you all for bearing with me tonight, because I've been slurring like a drunk. But anyways, moving on to our next one here. We have a $10 super chat from Kid Rock 966. Thank you so much, Kid Rock, for that support. He said, I got to see an A-10 perform today at the air show for the hydroplane boat race weekend here in the Tri-Cities and Washington. So badass, and long live the LSA.
And long live the Spring Army. And I got to say that is incredibly cool. I love to see A-10s. While I don't really think they're good and viable in a modern combat scenario, I do have to say that I think the A-10s look incredibly cool, and they are really neat to see operating in an air show or anywhere else out there in the real world. I got to say, I hope you had an incredibly large amount of fun out there at that air show and the hydroplane boat race, because that sounds like it was a load of fun, especially up in Washington State. That's got to be beautiful up there. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for the support and helping this channel keep on running. With that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Live, Laugh, Toaster Bath, who puts in an $8 donation and says, LSA pimp marmot for the folks.
And we can get the pimp marmot. Hopefully we can get it while I'm talking so fast. The internet is going to be working slower than I'm talking. And of course it is. And we got to wait. Hang on, everyone. Hang tight. And we got the marmot. We got the pimp marmot up in here. Hey, what's up, bitches? And look at that. Hey, it's the marmot. Look at that. That's absolutely incredible. We got the little hot dog man smoking the blunt down there. We got the pimp marmot smoking a cigar and wearing a pimp hat and wearing some cool sunglasses and the pimp cane and everything. We got it all. And I got to say, huge thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Live, Laugh, Toaster Bath. And wanting to see the little pimp marmot for a minute, because we absolutely know the pimp marmot is bitching, Governor. And so with that, thank you so much for the gift support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Maxim Malai. Once again, what's today's $7 donation? Thank you very much, good sir, on that support once again. He says, hello, enforcers. Grumpy guy's called Stefan Uke. He's a government figure in the Oblast and a huge ass. Oh, my God. He's going to take a question from the chat, and long live the LSA.
He's from the Kalinsky Oblast. Oh, my Lord, that is why. That answers all the questions. He's from Western Ukraine. And I got to say, thank you so much for the support and sharing who that was. He looked incredibly angry the entire time. And apparently, from what you're saying, he is, in fact, a big ass. And I would assume that that's both literally and figuratively based on how he looks. But nevertheless, I got to thank you so much for giving support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to take one from the chat in honor of Maxim Malay once again. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Thomas. He said, do you have any information regarding what happened in Kupiansk?
What happened in Kupiansk? What happened in Kupiansk? You want to know what happened in Kupiansk? I know what's happening in Kupiansk. Right now, the Ukrainian forces in this area, including the 10th Mountain Brigade, are holding this area quite doggedly. From what we understand, the Russian Federation is attempting to advance forward towards the area of Tavlshanka and Drovchina, but they are continuously failing those advances and taking incredibly high losses whenever those advances are made in large form. Currently, that offensive is currently on hold at the moment, as the Russians are currently focalizing and focusing a lot of their defensive efforts into the area of Vovchansk and offensive areas into the directions of Chancev Yar and Pokrovsk at the moment. And so from what we understand, while I'm starting to stutter right there, I have a and that was a king speech, folks. But nevertheless, from what we understand, they are largely not focusing on that area all too much at the moment, at least according to my current information. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Texas Trillis 210 said, dude is messed up, lol. And maybe it sounds like that, but crazily enough, this is as fast as I think every single day. And so I actually have to slow myself down talking a lot to be able to talk at slower speed, so that way people understand me, so that way I don't sound like some kind of a raging lunatic schizophrenic. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Thomas Kruger, who puts in a $5 donation, and thank you very much, Thomas Kruger, for the support. And sadly, no comment to address, but I hope Freddie's doing well also, and it's good to see you once again. And then, Enforcer, what tell you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support, Thomas Kruger, brother of Freddie Kruger. And I got to say, I love seeing your brother in my dreams. He's always really scary. He always looks really cool. Keep it up. And I got to say, thank you so much for the support, Thomas Kruger, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because while you didn't throw in the comment, mostly you do make this channel possible. So with that, thank you so much once again. We're on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to CK Bowl, who put in a $5 donation. He said, take a live chat question. That's the usual. That's the number 5. That's the big sandwich that always coming up fast. And thank you very much to CK Bowl for that support. We appreciate it very much. And that's a very good support. We appreciate that very much. And the live chat question here is going to go to Angel Hernandez, who said, did you guys hear that Nicolas Maduro, the dictator of Venezuela, said that if I lose the election this year, it'll be a bloodbath?
I did hear that, and that sounds incredibly concerning. It sounds like so he would try and create a civil war if he loses the election. But of course, he will not lose the election because there will be a large amount of election interference and tampering by Maduro's government. And so I'd assume he will most likely remain in power even after the election. He's just saying that to say it because it's fun and why not? You know, he's a dictator, do dictator things. And so with that, Slay Queen, and thank you once again for the support, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one right here goes to Zanti Misfit, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Zanti, for their support. They said A10 Warhol would work.
And maybe the A10 Warhol, maybe it would work, maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. I don't really know. But I would have to say in a modern era war like Ukraine, the A10 may not be too viable. But nevertheless, I would say, why not give it a shot? Give them a couple and let's see how they work. Let's get it going, baby. Let's get it going. And so with that, thank you so much for giving support, Zanti Misfit. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have a $5 super chat from Hazy King, and thank you very much, Hazy, for that support. They said, if you want to see some good Appalachian towns, look in the Southwest Virginia, like a hungry mother.
Hungry mother. I got to tell you something. Chris's mom is a hungry mother. Whoa! But beyond that, let's go take a look at hungry mother. All right, let's take a look. Hungry mother. Let's see here. Hungry mother. Where we got that? We got that right down here. Here's hungry mother. This is an actual place called Hungry Mother. I don't know why it's called Hungry Mother. Why is it called Hungry Mother? We don't know. But beyond that, we also have a hungry mother and a hungry mother. Look at that. We got the whole deal. But beyond that, let's take a look at this place. Let's take a look. All right, so we got some beautiful countryside. Look at that. It's the beautiful Appalachian Mountains. You know, some guy actually crashed his drug plane up in these mountains. You know, that's actually the funny thing. He actually killed his co-pilot, and it was something that we had to learn about in law school. For some reason, I just remember that looking at these mountains, but it was somewhere around this general area. But nevertheless, I would have to say that this is probably key Appalachia. I would love to go up here and take a look at it. But I got to tell y'all something. I'm staying on my guns here, damn it. Middletown, Ohio is not Appalachia, all right? I'm just putting that out there. Do with that what y'all want, but that is not Appalachia. If that's Appalachia, Wetumpka is Appalachia. But beyond that, I hope that this addressed that well. Thank you so much once again for the support. How about this channel to keep on running? And thank you, Hazy King, for sharing a little bit about what you think on the Appalachian Mountains. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have another super chat from Hazy King, who puts in a $5 donation. Thank you very much, Hazy King, for that support. He said, another good place to see in the Southwest Virginia's Appalachian Mountains is the Breaks Interstate and Park in my hometown, Hazy. Said by Hazy.
Oh, and that's what your name is. It's Hazy King. Look at that. Hey, let's take a look at that. Hazy, Virginia. Where is that? All right, this is a tiny little town. Tiny, itty-bitty town. It looks like everyone lives on one street. That's the way I like it. And look at that. They haven't even taken us a Google Street View here since 2008. Woo! Wait, that's a long time. That's an incredibly long time. But beyond that, I got to say, thank you so much for the support and sharing that information with us. We're going to have to come up here one day and try and look at this area because this is at the very southern tip of Virginia, right next to Kentucky. And I would like to take a look at this place, me personally. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and sharing a little bit more about the Appalachians because I want to go up there and I want to look at it. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Hazy King. I hope that does address it incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, jumping into our next super chat right here, we have a $2 super chat from LSA Sergeant Figment, and thank you very much for that support once again. It said, LSA, hit the like button, that's an order.
And that is an order from none other than an LSA Sergeant Figment. Y'all gotta hit that like button, it's an order now, you gotta do it. Come on, hit that like button, hurry it up. What are you doing, Jack? Hurry it up, hit that like button. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for support. LSA Sergeant Figment, help with this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so a huge thank you to you once again. You're an absolute legend of this stream, and a huge IDF veteran of the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the final super chat of the segment, and then we're finally going to be getting on into the Morse code decoders and live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And the final super chat of the segment is a $2 super chat from PNWEXSCO, who said, NCOs, that's a real string. E4 Mafia, let's go.
Hey, E4 Mafia, let's go. Yes, sir. And I gotta say, thank you so much for the support. NCOs are the real strength of an armed force. NCOs are the backbone of actual structure and command within the areas of the enlisted, and the enlisted make up the most of the armed forces. So I gotta say that those NCOs are incredibly important. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. PNWEXSCO. That actually got me to slow down right there, but still, thank you so much once again, because I would completely agree with you that NCOs are the modern core of an armed force. NCOs are some of the most important officers of any kind within any armed forces. So with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. With that, we are now moving on into our most Dakotas and our live chat questions. Due to time constraints, sadly, we'll only be able to get 3 live chat questions. I hope you all understand we've been going balls to the wall here. We've been going absolutely as fast as we can, and we still ran out of time. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so for tonight, we had the entire roster of Morse code cutters. We had the Close Timers and Mark Hodges and Open New, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, and David Millsaps. Thank you very much for solving the Morse code. And they said, the Morse code undeciphered says, it seems it has... Yeah. Okay, let me slow down.
One second. I got this, Matthew. I got this. Allow me. Tonight's Morse code decoders are Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Baldwin, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, and David Millsaps. The Morse code message reads as follows: LSA, Enforcer LSA, Morse code decipher. It seems that Hezbollah will now pay for the actions they've conducted against Israel. Long live the Lee Spring Army. And that's the sound of money. A rock falling on top of your head. That money sound was wrong. But nevertheless, that was the Morse code message tonight. Y'all got that dead on the nail on the 885th day of the war. I gotta say that is absolutely impressive. Absolutely incredible that y'all keep on getting that right. And y'all have an amazing skill that not only brings wonderment to the entirety of the Late Spring Army, but even myself, 885 days into the war. I gotta thank y'all so much once again for getting that Morse code message correct. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so this question right here goes to a NewTube, who says, any recent news on the potential problems of the Rostov nuclear power plant? I have not seen much on it since the initial report, and no credible reporting anyway. Great stream.
From what we understand, the Rostov nuclear power plant has largely gone quiet. We do not know if there was a nuclear disaster there or not. We do understand that all the iodide tablets were confiscated from the local pharmacies, suggesting that there was something that happened, but nevertheless, we have not been able to get any carry-on information from there. So at the moment, we understand that there may have been some sort of a minor nuclear incident there, but nothing major and nothing severe, because we would have heard about it by this time. So at this point, we are classifying this as a possible minor accident, and even then it is slightly possible. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And Matthew, was that the third to last question of the night, or the second to last question of the night?
So we're now moving on to our last question of the night, because that's all we got.
Wait. I have to do the thing. Matthew. We have to do the thing. And so with that, we're on to the final question of the night. And so who's the lucky last person through in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Maxim Malay, who says, what about the PMCs, and will they be resurrected as a spare force?
Resurrected as a spare force or a space force? It's spare force. I read that wrong. But beyond that, that's a very interesting question. I would actually say that the Wagner PMC is probably not going to be reinstated as a spare force, because currently they got their ass beat in Africa. They apparently got in a firefight in Mali, and about 35 of them got killed. You would think that they would have done better, considering that they were fighting in conventional war for about 2 years, but hey, you know, potato, I guess fighting guerrilla forces isn't the same as fighting a conventional army, but whatever.
And it was absolutely terrible. The Wagner forces got beat down quite badly. It was quite a massacre. They were left on the side of the street, quite bloodied and quite nasty. Terrible. The Wagner forces. And also a well-known war blogger for the Russians went down today. He went down hard. He went down very hard. I saw the pictures. It was ugly. But that was what happened.
Oh, it was terribly rough. The crimson, the surfaces were covered in crimson sanguinary fluids, as it appeared that the Wagner mercenaries had met their unfortunate end at the hand of Mali mercenaries. It is incredibly unfortunate. We'll be getting more news here on NWNBC 95 Local. But thank you all so much once again for watching. And beyond that, I do have to say that the spare forces of the Wagner mercenaries are probably not going to be around. From what we understand, most of them were integrated into Rosguardia, or most of them went back to Africa. And from what we understand, they will not be around anytime soon. The Russians have generally moved the PMCs out of favor, and so we do not believe that they're going to be used in any major form from this point forward. And so with that, folks, I thank you so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to cover this news for each and every one of y'all every single night. Tonight, we had a peak viewership of probably around 8.9 thousand people and around 87,000 live viewers who watched the stream from beginning to end. I got to thank you all so much once again for watching. We are absolutely honored. And if you've enjoyed the stream, please make sure to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe, because we run this stream 6 days a week from Tuesday to Sunday, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, every single night. You can't miss us. We're always on air, and we're always covering the news. And if Israel invades Lebanon tomorrow, we'll be making sure to cover that live right when it happens. And so with that, I thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, slow Ukrainian, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And once again, thank you all for watching the stream tonight. It's been a clever stream tonight, quite clever. And we've also gone quite crazy at the end segment right here. Like the good fine Peruvian blow. But we're not hot dog man, so it's just a joke. But anyways, with that, we'll see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next fundraiser stream. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava. And we hope that Ukraine wins the war. We support Ukraine 100%, no matter what anyone says. But with that, see you all tomorrow, and good night.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its